Ben 10 picks up the red super energy device. Chapter 61. Boom. Boom. Elsewhere, in a team similar to an excavation crew, the captain of the excavation crew frowned at the mechanical failure and said, "Something's wrong." Crack. Crack. Just then, he heard crisp cracking sounds and clearly visible cracks on the ground that continued to spread. Feeling a bad premonition, he immediately shouted, "Run! Run!" Upon hearing him, everyone fled into the distance, and the open ground where they were standing fractured into a large pit. A moment later, the fracturing finally stopped. The captain led the remaining team members nervously to the edge of the deep pit. Just then, a flame flew up from the depths of the pit. Ha ha. The flame continuously changed shape in the air, forming a face resembling a demon, accompanied by a faint laugh. Eventually, it transformed into a cyan mask and fell to the ground. After the captain picked it up, his intuition told him that this mask was not simple. At the same time, inside an old RV parked by the roadside, Tien Mark smiled and asked his 3 grandchildren, "How is it? Is it delicious? You must have never tasted such delicacies before." Tien Xiaoyan and the others each had a bowl of green, powder-like food. "It's delicious, Grandpa, just a bit spicy," Tien Xiaoyan said with a crispy crunch in his mouth, smiling. "Ha ha. Then have some water," Tien Mark said with a smile, handing a cup of water to Tien Xiaoyan. "It's a bit crunchy." "What is it, Grandpa?" Gwen Tennyson asked, continuously chewing along with Ben Tennyson. "Dung beetles," Tien Mark said, his face smiling but his eyes not. Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson instantly froze, but Tien Xiaoyan continued eating as if nothing was wrong. Ah. Ah. A moment later, both of them turned and threw up. "Is it too spicy?" "Then have some water." Tien Mark thought it was due to the spiciness, so he got 2 cups of water. "This isn't about being too spicy, okay." Ben Tennyson wiped the saliva from his mouth and grumbled. Hee hee. Just as Tien Mark was about to say something, he noticed his alarm suddenly went off. A tablet flipped open from above, then passed over Ben Tennyson and the others, showing Tien Mark an image of the mask. "No." Tien Mark's eyes narrowed, and he said with some shock. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" Tien Xiaoyan noticed the solemnity on Tien Mark's face and asked. "The Abjid Divine Demon Mask, the most powerful and destructive key in human history," Tien Mark said solemnly, then turned to open the satellite map and drove off. Tien Xiaoyan noticed that Tien Mark's demeanor had changed, like an old veteran who hadn't fought in years had returned. During the drive, Tien Mark once again explained that the Abjid Divine Demon Mask could lead one to the most powerful divine sword in history, the Excalibur. The Tiangong Association plumbers had searched for decades without finding it. Excalibur. What kind of alien is that? Ben Tennyson asked Tien Mark upon hearing the strange name. "It's a divine sword, where would an alien come from?" Tien Xiaoyan looked at him speechlessly. The Excalibur is an artifact created by the Mayans. Legend says that once it's wielded, it can destroy a city. Tien Mark nodded and continued to explain. "Wow. That sounds like a divine sword a superhero like us could get," Ben Tennyson said playfully. Ben Tennyson. "The divine sword is not a toy. Whoever controls it will decide the fate of humanity. I cannot let it fall into evil hands," Tien Mark turned and said sternly. Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson had never seen Tien Mark so strict before. "Grandpa. What exactly is wrong with you?" Tien Xiaoyan also noticed and asked tentatively. "I'm just doing what needs to be done, nothing," Tien Mark, after being asked, regained some composure, paused, and then said. "We're here. They must have hidden the mask inside. Xiao Yan. Little Ban. Transform into aliens and sneak in to open the side door for us," Tien Mark said seriously, seeing the building ahead and people guarding it. "Sneak in, shouldn't it be breaking in?" Before Tien Xiaoyan could speak, he heard Ben Tennyson's confident voice. "Little Ban. I don't have time to explain how important the mask is right now. Can I really trust you?" Tien Mark frowned, hearing the playful remark. "Yes, of course, leave it to us, Grandpa." Ben Tennyson was clearly startled, and Tien Xiaoyan immediately covered his mouth and responded with a smile. After Tien Mark walked a little further inside, Ben Tennyson couldn't help but say, "What's up with Grandpa? He's gotten a bit fierce." "Don't bother him. He's probably thinking about how to save the world," Gwen Tennyson said indifferently. Alright, let's go in now. Tian Xiaoyan patted his head to comfort him, then turned his watch, selected Ice Ghost, and pressed down. Ben10, meanwhile, transformed into Little Odd Soldier. Tian Xiaoyan phased his body, caught Little Odd Soldier with his hand, flew forward, then placed him next to a pipe, letting him crawl in. Tian Xiaoyan then phased into the building. Ben10 climbed out of the pipe onto a toilet lid, looked at the gum on his head, and said with a bitter face, "Oh, this is annoying. I should have transformed into Ghost Freak and phased in like my brother." But when he got out, he found two vicious dogs staring fiercely at him. "Ah, big brother!" Ben10 shouted, seeing them about to pounce. "Ha!" Tian Xiaoyan phased in and quickly kicked both vicious dogs away. "Are you okay?" Tian Xiaoyan lifted Ben10 and asked with concern. "I'm fine, but couldn't you have moved your mouth away first?" Although Ben10 wanted to apologize, he was chilled by the cold air from Tian Xiaoyan's mouth. "Oh, sorry." Tian Xiaoyan understood what happened, turned his head, and then he and Ben10 went to the side door. After opening it, they saw Tian Mark and the others already waiting. Not bad. But it would be better if you could be a bit faster." Tian Mark nodded first, but still complained a little. Tian Xiaoyan looked at his departing back with some helplessness. "Why do you smell all stinky?" Ben10 lifted Ben10 and complained. Ben10 hated that topic and turned his head away. Then they followed Tian Mark inside. At the same time, a black car arrived just after they entered. While walking through the tunnel, Ben10 turned to Ben10 and said, "Don't you think Grandpa is really too serious now?" "I've never seen anyone so serious." Ben10 leaned on her shoulder, agreeing wholeheartedly. "Don't speculate anymore. Grandpa is probably just fulfilling a responsibility he wants to complete." Tian Xiaoyan, with his long robe, turned around and said. Bang! Tian Mark opened the door, and they saw a large vault inside. "The mask must be inside," Tian Mark said with certainty, looking at the vault in front of him. "Let me." Ben10 jumped forward first, lay on the vault, swiped a few times with his feet to enter the code, and then opened it. "Beautiful, little Ban. Well done." Tian Xiaoyan and Ben10 were the first to give verbal praise. Tian Mark's gaze, however, was on the mask after it was opened, and he said with a dazed look, "She is beautiful, isn't she?" Why does it feel a bit eerie?" Tian Xiaoyan said in surprise, seeing this mask that resembled a Hanya mask. 40 years of hard work, all for this one. Now, finally, Tian Mark picked up the mask and said indifferently. Just then, Tian Xiaoyan sensed someone approaching and quickly turned to shoot a blast of ice ray behind him. Bang! The opponent seemed to have anticipated it, pulled out an energy gun, and directly engaged in a beam struggle. The small fluctuation made both sides shield themselves with their hands. When the opponent approached, Tian Xiaoyan said in surprise, seeing the familiar attire, Yimok. Yimok, wearing a golden mask and dressed like a medieval soldier, walked out and said with a smile, "You're still as sharp as ever, Tian Xiaoyan." Then he turned to Tian Mark. "I thought you had retired, Mr. Plumber. Or should I call you Mark? It's Yimok and the Eternal Warrior who tried to skin me alive last time. Although my brother beat them up, I didn't expect them to come back." Ben10 pointed at the opponent and shouted. Can't you remember something good? But I'm glad you still remember us. Of course, I can't forget the Tian family who made the Eternal Warrior homeless." Yimok felt a bit awkward being reminded of that, but he raised his aura again and said coldly. "That's called self-inflicted." Tian Mark pointed at him and shouted. "We're really like rats crossing the street. Although I'd love to stay and chat, I'm busy ruling the world, so please give me the mask." Yimok shrugged, indicating he didn't care, but still held out his hand for the mask. Whoever grabs it, it's theirs." Tian Xiaoyan heard this, switched to Diamond Head, and transformed his hands into great swords. "Grandpa, you take Little Ban and the others out first. I'll meet up with you later." Tian Xiaoyan turned to Tian Mark and said. "Alright, I'll leave it to you." Tian Mark showed a slight hesitation in his eyes after hearing this, then immediately nodded. Negotiations failed, then. "Well, I'll just have to lay you flat and take it." Yimok, seeing he couldn't get it, turned to his two subordinates and said. They all pulled out energy longswords. Tian Xiaoyan immediately went forward, swung horizontally, and knocked one subordinate flying. Yimok suddenly launched a surprise aerial attack, swinging his knife. Yimok, with your petty tricks, don't show off in front of me, Tian Xiaoyan blocked in time and said mockingly. That's not certain. This time, the situation is completely different. I'll make good use of your corpse as a memento, Tian Xiaoyan, Yimok said coldly, cutting down with force. Now, run. Tian Mark saw that their attention was on Tian Xiaoyan and quickly said. Bang. Tian Mark, at this moment, no longer cared about the safety of others. He directly crashed into the police officer, leading Gwen Tennyson and the others towards the main door. Grandpa, are we just leaving Big Brother behind like this? Ben Tennyson said, somewhat disbelievingly, on Gwen Tennyson's shoulder. He'll be fine. We just need to do what we can, Tian Mark said sternly. Just then, the police officer who was knocked flying shouted into his walkie-talkie, intruder. Emergency lockdown. Seal all exits. Bang. 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 Instantly, alarms blared. Tian Mark and the others turned to see people guarding the door, then spotted another exit. Hold on tight, Tian Mark saw it was about to close and turned to the two of them. He then accelerated, first throwing Gwen Tennyson and the others out, then sliding out himself. Sometimes I really want to know how you do such amazing moves. Ben Tennyson, now back in human form, grumbled. No time for grumbling, little Ban, hurry, Tian Mark stood up and said. Bang. Tian Xiaoyan created a crystal wall, blocking the distance between them. They should have escaped, right? Then I should also leave, Tian Xiaoyan sighed, assuming Ben Tennyson and the others had gotten far away, then switched to Ice Ghost and phased out of the building. Bang. Yimok furiously shattered the crystal wall with a single blow. Seeing that Tian Xiaoyan had disappeared, he said angrily, quickly prepare the cars. We need to get the mask before them. Then he blasted a hole in the nearby wall with a shot and walked out. Tian Xiaoyan, searching on the highway, also spotted the old RV and quickly went to it. After phasing, he returned to the car. Welcome back, Big Brother, Ben Tennyson and the others said in surprise, seeing Tian Xiaoyan suddenly appear. Glad you're back, Tian Mark glanced at the returning Tian Xiaoyan and said indifferently. I'll take that as you caring about me. Tian Xiaoyan changed back into human form and shrugged helplessly after hearing the emotionless words. Just then, countless long-range energy missiles attacked directly. Tian Mark looked in the car's rearview mirror and saw Yimok and his group pursuing in 2 cars. Grandpa, I'll take care of 1 car. The rest is up to you, Tian Xiaoyan, feeling he should make an appearance, turned to Tian Mark and said. He then turned his watch and transformed into Stinkfly. Gwen Tennyson looked at him in surprise and said, wow, this is the first time you've transformed into Stinkfly, Big Brother. There's an exception to everything. Tian Xiaoyan opened the car door, flapped his wings, and directly spat several globs of goo at the 2 cars. Bang. Yimoki's vehicle and the other car began to skid rapidly. Fool bug. Get him. Yimok looked angrily at Tian Xiaoyan in the air, then turned to the people in the other car and said. The leading Eternal Warrior soldier nodded, then activated a button on the car, and in an instant, it transformed into a small spaceship. Whoa. You guys are cheating. Tian Xiaoyan looked in surprise as the spaceship in front of him crashed towards him, and he quickly dodged. Bang. As a result, he was hit by a ray. Tian Xiaoyan gritted his teeth, angrily chased after it, and began to fight it in the air. Below, Tian Mark steadily drove the vehicle, dodging Yimoki's attacks, but this wasn't a solution. Little Ban. Are you ready yet? He turned to Ben Tennyson, who was still fumbling with the Omnitrix. Ben Tennyson raised the still charging Omnitrix with a bitter face. Looks like I'll have to do it myself. Tian Mark shook his head helplessly, pressed the auto drive button, then turned and walked into the restroom. Isn't it a bit too urgent to have to pee now? Ben Tennyson said in surprise to Gwen Tennyson. A moment later, Tian Mark walked out wearing a blue uniform. Grandpa, what are you wearing? Ben Tennyson asked, looking at the outfit with confusion. This is my work uniform, prepared just in case. Deploy. Tian Mark said indifferently, then surveyed the situation of the opposing vehicles, then, as if giving himself a command, opened the car door. Holding a magnetic suction device, he jumped onto Yimoki's car. You, Tien Mark. Just as Yimok was about to say something, he found Tien Mark glaring fiercely at him. Get out of my way. Don't interfere with me. Tien Mark directly pulled out an energy blade and slashed at Yimoki's vehicle. Bang! Yimok was not to be outdone. He activated auto drive, flipped out of the car window onto the roof, raised his longsword, and casually mocked, "Hee hee, you're walking right into a trap." The two fought on the car roof. On the other side, Ben10 and the other's vehicle was also attacked by the remaining Eternal Warrior. Ah! Little Ban! Transform quickly, Gwen Tennyson shouted, seeing the Eternal Warrior about to fall out of the car. I'm trying to figure it out now, but it's not listening to me. Ben Tennyson also tried hard to turn the Omnitrix in his hand, but it still didn't respond. Bang! An Eternal Warrior directly pulled out a long knife from his chest and tried to slash Gwen Tennyson. Hey! Find someone your own size to fight. Ben Tennyson, at this moment, managed to attract his attention. Subsequently, after some struggle, Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson, after nearly losing their lives, managed to prove themselves by pushing the Eternal Warrior off the car. I think it's time to have a good talk with Grandpa, Ben Tennyson said, panting. Exactly. Gwen Tennyson saw Tien Mark, who was focused on fighting Yimok, and also had a look of agreement. Tien Mark, the Echua God Sword is mine, no one can stop me. Yimok pressed down hard on Tien Mark, forcing him to retreat a few steps. Tien Mark resisted with difficulty, when suddenly he heard a gasp from above. Grandpa, duck. Tien Mark heard this familiar voice and, without thinking, quickly ducked down. No. Yimok, however, saw Tien Xiaoyan rushing over at extreme speed, delivering a tail whip that sent him flying onto the front panel of the car. Is it done? Tien Mark asked, looking at Tien Xiaoyan, who had rushed over. Mission accomplished, Tien Xiaoyan said with a smile, pointing at the small spaceship falling and burning above. Afterward, Tien Xiaoyan led Tien Mark back into the car. A while later, the car broke down, and they had no choice but to stop somewhere and fix it. During this time, Tien Xiaoyan heard about Gwen Tennyson and the others' encounter in the car just now, as well as Tien Mark's somewhat indifferent attitude towards them. This made Tien Xiaoyan take it seriously, looking at Tien Mark, who was repairing the car above. Just then, Ben Tennyson, who was playing with the mask, seemed to activate something, causing it to glow green and project a virtual building. Grandpa, come look. Ben Tennyson shouted loudly. Tien Mark originally didn't want to pay attention to him, but then he discovered this virtual building that made his eyes light up. This is a map of the Echua Temple. We must get there before Yimok and them. Tien Mark couldn't stop for a moment, wanting to start the car quickly. Grandpa, wait. Tien Xiaoyan reached out at this moment, wanting to stop his actions. No time, Xiao Yan. We must hurry, Tien Mark said, trying to get into the car without looking back. I said. Wait. After hearing this, Tien Xiaoyan's eyes turned cold, and the sky energy in his hand directly transformed into a large hand that opened the car door, preventing Tien Mark from moving forward. What do you want to do? Tien Mark turned to look at the cold-eyed Tien Xiaoyan, questioning him. I'd like to ask, what do you want to do? Ever since that ghost mask appeared, you've been like a different person. If it were normally, I wouldn't demand much, but Little Ban and the others almost faced a life-threatening crisis just now, and you were busy fighting Yimok, completely unconcerned about it, which I cannot tolerate. Tien Xiaoyan almost roared at Tien Mark. At these words, Tien Mark also gritted his teeth and looked at Tien Xiaoyan angrily. What's going on now? Ben Tennyson looked at the two angry people, bewildered. How would I know? Gwen Tennyson also looked puzzled. I'm not in the mood to argue with you right now. You must remember one important thing. The God Sword cannot fall into the wrong hands, Tien Mark said, gritting his teeth. I don't care about that fool God Sword. But you, Grandpa, you need to remember, you're not a plumber anymore. There's no need to shoulder the responsibility of saving the world. Think about everything you've done before, it's just too much. After Tien Xiaoyan's words, Tien Mark's expression softened. He looked at Gwen Tennyson and Ben Tennyson, who, though somewhat normal now, still had a hint of fear in their eyes towards him, and said confusedly, what am I doing? Tien Mark finally understood that he had gone too far. Not only was he harsh towards his grandchildren, but he also disregarded their lives, which made him feel somewhat broken in his current state of realization. Sigh. Think about it, Grandpa, do you really think that God's sword can still be used now? Tian Xiaoyan had also calmed down at this point. He walked over, patted Tian Mark, and explained, you mean, it might be broken now. Tian Mark's expression brightened as he removed his hand and looked at Tian Xiaoyan. Tian Xiaoyan nodded, indicating that it was indeed possible. Alright, but we still need to confirm it. But before that, little Ban. Xiao Wen. I'm really sorry, my overconfident attitude scared you. Tian Mark nodded, then turned to Ben Tennyson and the others and apologized. It's okay, Grandpa. We know you're doing it for the good of the world. Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson both shrugged, indicating they didn't mind. Now, to save time, let me take you there. Tian Xiaoyan rotated his watch and transformed into upgrade, covering the entire car and creating 2 rocket thrusters. After everyone got in, they directly started the car and flew into the air. Arriving at a pyramid-like structure, Yimok and his group had already arrived first, attempting to blast open the door with explosives but to no avail. It seems they are indeed here. We need to confirm the situation of the God Sword. Tian Mark analyzed and nodded, then turned to the 3 and patiently said, okay, Grandpa. Tian Xiaoyan saw that Tian Mark's tone and face had recovered well, and he also sighed, nodding in relief. Subsequently, they went to the adjacent building and began searching for something akin to a secret door. Ben Tennyson searched all day with no results, then boredom led him to look at the mask, and indeed, he found a clue. Tian Mark saw Ben Tennyson put on the mask and seemingly grope with his hand, asking confusedly, little Ban, what are you doing? Ben Tennyson placed his hand on the stone brick and said, since this thing brought us here, it should have a reason to bring me in. After speaking, he pressed it. Rumble. A large door opened, and Tian Mark looked on in surprise, then praised and patted Ben Tennyson's head, well done, kid. Ben Tennyson felt like his old grandpa was back and smiled. Then they all moved forward. Tian Mark held a torch, looking at the surrounding structure, and sighed, they certainly didn't use electricity back then. Grandpa, I feel like you've turned back to normal. Gwen Tennyson heard this playful remark, her lips curling into a smile as she looked at Tian Mark. Ha ha. Thanks Xiao Yan. He made me realize that I shouldn't always take my responsibilities too seriously. Tian Mark responded with a laugh. That's fine. Watch out. Tian Xiaoyan turned around, sighed, and shrugged, only to see a dark shadow pounce on Gwen Tennyson. Ah. Gwen Tennyson heard her own voice, turned to see 2 large hands grabbing at her, but it was too late, and she was captured. Yimok. Tian Mark watched Yimok, who was holding Gwen Tennyson hostage, pull out an energy gun from his waist and point it at him. How lucky. It was indeed you making all that noise, Yimok said with a cold laugh. He had heard the sound of the mechanism activating just now. After entering, he also discovered Tian Xiaoyan and the others discussing, and in an instant, a wicked idea sparked in his mind. Give me the mask, or this girl might lose her life. Yimok took a long sword from one of his subordinates and pointed it at Gwen Tennyson. Don't even think about it, Tian Mark said again, due to the tension. Grandpa X3. Seeing Tian Mark about to enter that state again, Tian Xiaoyan and the others urgently shouted. Tian Mark seemed to come back, blinked his eyes, sighed, and said, take the mask, and stay away from us. He then pulled out the mask. Throw it over, Yimok said at this moment. Don't even think about it, return my cousin first. Otherwise, if anything happens to her, my brothers and my alien heroes will tear you to pieces, Ben Tennyson cleverly said first. Alright. I hope you can keep your promise, and we'll exchange at the same time. Yimok thought to himself that if he reneged, he might really be torn to pieces by these 2 kids, so he randomly proposed a simultaneous exchange. Tian Mark tossed the mask into the air, and Yimok also threw Gwen Tennyson back to them. Tian Mark steadily caught her. Ha ha. Finally. Yimok reached out, grabbed the mask, and laughed wildly. Bang. Then, fearing that Tian Mark and the others would go back on their word, Yimok directly used his energy gun to shoot the ground, creating a mist to cover them. They ran. Ben Tennyson said, eyes wide, seeing Yimoki's disappearing figure after the smoke cleared. It's all right, as long as you're safe. Tien Mark shook his head. Grandpa. We still have a chance to follow them, Tien Xiaoyan said, pointing at the footprints left in their direction. All right then. Stick close to me, Tien Mark said, regaining his spirit after seeing the footprints, and turned to the three. The three nodded and followed the direction of the footprints. However, after a while, the four curiously poked their heads out from a broken wall and saw a large monster, somewhat resembling the mask, attacking Yimok and his group. Who is that guy? Why does he look so familiar? Ben10 asked, confused, feeling a sense of familiarity from the way the other party attacked. We've fought so many alien monsters, of course there are similarities. Tien Xiaoyan looked at him helplessly. He must be Apu Jia, the Mayan death god, or the king of hell. He should be the guardian of the Echua god sword. Xiao Yan. Little Ban. You two go distract him, and Xiao Wen and I will go retrieve the god sword. Tien Mark patiently explained the plan, looking at the god sword on the high platform. All right, we'll listen to you this time. Tien Xiaoyan vibrated his watch and transformed into Shenli Tyrannosaurus, while Ben10 transformed into four arms. Hey! Ugly! The Mayan death god, who was pummeling Yimok and his group, turned around to see Tien Xiaoyan and Ben10 waving at him. Come get a beating. Tien Xiaoyan stood in a fighting stance and said sternly. He directly leapt over, roaring, and punched towards Tien Xiaoyan and the others. Bang! Tien Xiaoyan and the others each caught one of his fists, then threw him backward. Is this guy done yet? Ben10 asked, looking at the motionless mask monster in the smoke. I don't know, oh my god, watch out. Tien Xiaoyan was about to go back when he saw a long tongue shoot out from the smoke and managed to dodge it in time, but Ben10 wasn't so lucky and was directly entangled by the arm. Whoa! Ben10's eyes widened as he was thrown into the air. The mask monster flung him against the nearby wall, then punched him into the wall. Little Ban. Long-tongued monster. Tien Xiaoyan looked at the dented Ben10, his anger flaring as he glared at the mask monster, then quickly rushed towards him. The mask monster roared, unwilling to be outdone, and rushed forward at the same time. Bang! The two instantly collided, while on the other side, Tien Mark, relying on his plumber's equipment, dealt with Yimoki's eternal warrior. Tien Mark. You are really troublesome. Yimok took out a small bomb from his pocket and threw it at Tien Mark. You fool. Tien Mark's eyes widened when he saw the bomb thrown at him. Gwen Tennyson's eyes also widened when she saw the bomb suddenly thrown, but then her hands aimed at that direction. Boom! A small explosion of smoke appeared on their side. Just as Yimok was secretly gloating, he discovered a blue shield on the other side of the smoke. How is that possible? Yimok was somewhat disbelieving. Xiao Wen. You! Tien Mark said in shock, seeing a faint blue glowing energy appear in Gwen Tennyson's hands. This is. Gwen Tennyson heard Tien Mark's words, then opened her eyes and saw the flickering energy in her hands. This scene was so familiar. Then she saw the energy disappear. What did Gwen Tennyson want to say? Bang! The nearby wall suddenly cracked. Tien Mark and the others turned to look, and the mask monster had already been knocked unconscious by Ben Tennyson and the other. This guy is really hard to beat, Ben Tennyson said, panting, with his four hands on his knees. Exactly. He can even use his tongue. That's just disgusting, Tien Xiaoyan said with a disgusted look, shaking the saliva from his hand. However, just as they were all looking down, Yimok suddenly ambushed Tien Mark and the others, kicking them down. Grandpa. Tien Xiaoyan saw this scene, switched to Diamond Head, and created a crystal barrier on the ground. Tien Mark and the others, who almost fell to the ground, finally got a buffer. Yimok. Tien Mark released Gwen Tennyson from his arms and saw Yimok, who was walking to the high platform and about to pull out the god sword, saying with a solemn expression. Finally. The power to control the world is finally mine. Yimok excitedly pulled out the gleaming god sword, but before he could gloat for 2 seconds, the god sword suddenly turned into a pile of dust and fell to the ground. What happened? Yimok looked at the dust on the ground, bewildered. Ha. It seems that a decades-old ultimate weapon, without being activated, has also become a fragile antique. Tien Mark said, clutching his stomach and laughing. Bang! But at this moment, the temple suddenly began to collapse. Ben Tennyson grabbed Tien Mark and Gwen Tennyson, and Tien Xiaoyan also helped clear the way for them. Yimok. Hurry. Tien Mark saw Yimok on the high platform still disbelievingly fiddling with the pile of dust and shouted loudly. Although they were enemies, he couldn't just watch someone die like that. This is impossible, this is impossible. Yimok muttered crazily, as if he hadn't heard Tien Mark. Rumble. When they came out, the temple had completely collapsed. I didn't expect it to be like this, Ben Tennyson said with a sigh after reverting from his transformation, looking at the ruins in front of him. Grandpa, how are you feeling? Tien Xiaoyan asked Tien Mark, his expression somewhat serious. HMPH. Don't worry, now that I know how it finally turned out, I actually feel a bit relieved. Tien Mark's expression suddenly became relaxed, and he said with a smile. Grandpa, are you still wearing that outfit? Gwen Tennyson complained about Tien Mark's plumber's uniform. Oh, right, speaking of that, this outfit makes me feel a bit itchy all over. I need to change quickly, Tien Mark said, as if remembering something, and quickly rushed to the old RV. Ha 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 ha. The three looked at each other, then burst into laughter. Meanwhile, in a city prison. Bang! A girl with long white hair, purple eyes, and wearing a purple wizard's robe broke through the defenses and came to the front of a prison cell, breaking it open with a magic spell. Long time no see, uncle. She smiled, looking at the black-robed man floating in the air. Evil spell sorceress. Grabbing corpse turned his head, his eyes glowing yellow, and said solemnly. Ah, ah, ah. At this moment, an old RV was teetering on the edge of a cliff, and just then, 4 glowing red hands grabbed it. Ah. 4 arms, into whom Ben Tennyson had transformed, forcefully pulled the bus. He then pulled it to the ground, removed the partition at the back of the bus, and reassuringly told the old people in front of him, "It's all right, the crisis has been resolved. Please rest assured." Just as he was about to turn and leave, one of the old people, seemingly no longer afraid of his 4-armed appearance, complained, "Aren't you going to help us off the bus, Mr. Big Guy?" Huh. Ben Tennyson turned his head, looking at them in surprise. "Please, help me off the bus, okay? My back hurts so much." "Why does your back hurt? Why does my back hurt?" The old people's complaints rose and fell, and Ben Tennyson suddenly remembered something and turned to look at the car. Hee hee. Tien Xiaoyan stood by the car door with a mischievous smile, waving at him. Oh, bother, Ben Tennyson finally understood why Tien Xiaoyan hadn't actively rushed to help when they first arrived. Watching Ben Tennyson help the old people off the bus, Tien Xiaoyan smiled, then turned and entered the car. So, little sister, do you understand? Tien Xiaoyan asked, looking at Gwen Tennyson, who was flipping through the magic grimoire. Slap. Gwen Tennyson, with a bitter expression, closed the grimoire again and complained, "Not at all. The words here are too profound, I can't understand them at all. Why can't you teach me how to understand these words?" Ahahaha, I'm sorry too. I only understood it by feeling. Tien Xiaoyan awkwardly scratched his head. He had heard Tien Mark mention before that Gwen Tennyson's sky energy seemed to have awakened. Tien Xiaoyan, after a moment of thought, tested the energy in her body at some point, and indeed, there was already some growing energy within her. It just couldn't be fully unleashed yet, she needed to study hard. Why can't I understand by feeling, but you can? Gwen Tennyson questioned again. This thing mainly depends on talent. Tien Xiaoyan's teeth gleamed as he smiled confidently. This is infuriating. Gwen Tennyson was completely speechless by this answer. Oh, my back hurts so much. This great hero is tired like a bear. Just then, Ben Tennyson opened the car door and said with a weary expression. How does it feel to help old people? Tien Xiaoyan sat beside him, saying with a mischievous smile. Go away, how dare you say that? Ben Tennyson pointed at Tien Xiaoyan, huffing angrily. Little Ban, you should be proud. If it weren't for you, or Xiao Yan, who knows what would have happened to those people, Tien Mark also turned his head and advised. I know, but I also really want to have an ordinary summer vacation, just messing around and lying around all day. Just like, Xiao Wen, Ben Tennyson thought, then pointed at Gwen Tennyson, who was looking at a computer nearby. Hey, what do you mean by that? And I can help you guys now too. A faint blue sky energy appeared in Gwen Tennyson's hand. Because Ben Tennyson had previously asked Tian Xiaoyan to explain sky energy knowledge, he had some understanding of it. He looked disdainfully at the sky energy in Gwen Tennyson's hand. I'm not trying to be mean, Xiao Wen. You're even weaker than my brother's sky energy. I just need to change my mood. Is there anything that can help me calm down? Gwen Tennyson pouted, looking at the lucky girl mask she was holding, and pondered for a moment before speaking. Alright, little Ban. Stop talking about that. I think I saw you stay there for a while just now. Did you say anything to those old people? Tian Xiaoyan felt the atmosphere was a bit awkward and quickly changed the subject. Oh. Those old people seem to want me to take them to some magic expo. They're really silly, Ben Tennyson thought for a moment, then pouted and said. Magic expo. Gwen Tennyson immediately said in surprise when she heard the phrase. At the same time, somewhere else, Grabbing Corpse, an evil spell sorceress, began to perform a ritual. Grabbing Corpse chanted a spell, and the smoke from the bonfire in front of him formed a red magic pendant stone. Ah! Bazel magic pendant, reveal your location, Grabbing Corpse commanded. The previous items began to transform into a hexagram patterned navigation map, with yellow dots indicating its location. By the way, can it be used like this? Alright, it's good to see you again, uncle. I'm going back first, evil spell sorceress said as she looked at the somewhat frightening Grabbing Corpse and began to back away. Grabbing Corpse turned his head coldly, directly shooting yellow energy from his magic staff to shatter the stone in front of evil spell sorceress, and said majestically, you must stay and await my command. You can only leave when I tell you to. Alright, uncle. Evil spell sorceress's current magical foundation was still no match for this magic master, so she could only endure his commands. By the way, uncle, who is it that put you in prison last time? Evil spell sorceress was very curious about how this highly skilled magic user, Grabbing Corpse, whom she admired, could have been put in prison by someone else. It was simply too strange. Don't talk about that anymore, it was just an annoying magic kid, Grabbing Corpse roared angrily when he heard this, instantly recalling the scene of Tian Xiaoyan casting magic. Alright, I won't say any more. Evil spell sorceress awkwardly raised her hands, while also becoming interested in the magic kid, Grabbing Corpse mentioned. On the other side, the next morning, Tian Xiaoyan and his group arrived at this so-called Magic Expo. Gwen Tennyson had been looking forward to it, but after wandering around for a while, she said with a bitter face, this is the so-called Magic Expo. It's just a gathering of small props and parlor tricks. I think it's quite interesting. Hee. Tian Xiaoyan saw the performer doing card tricks in front of him, and his amazing skill made him applaud enthusiastically. Big brother. You've really had enough. You can do magic yourself, Gwen Tennyson said helplessly, holding her head. Hey, look, there are a lot of strange things here. Ben Tennyson pulled out various strange items from a nearby box. Alright, since we're already here, let's just wander around. Tian Mark noticed Gwen Tennyson's bitterness and said soothingly. Maybe you'll find something you like, Tian Xiaoyan encouraged. Gwen Tennyson nodded after hearing their advice, then wandered around for a while and came to a shop in front of a lady with a blue hat, looking at the goods displayed. You don't have any real magic artifacts here, do you? Gwen Tennyson raised her hand and asked. Everything is laid out before you, little girl, the lady said indifferently after a glance. Then Gwen Tennyson's gaze shifted, and she suddenly found something very familiar. A yellow and blue armor with a red magic pendant stone on it. This looks like, I'll take it. Gwen Tennyson looked at the armor, then smiled and put it on her hand. How is it? Did you find something you like? Tian Mark asked when he saw Gwen Tennyson smiling. Almost. Oh, by the way, big brother, come and look at this, Gwen Tennyson replied with a smile, then turned to look at Tian Xiaoyan beside her, raising her hand and speaking. What's up? This. Tian Xiaoyan didn't feel anything at first, but after observing the item embedded in Gwen Tennyson's hand, he immediately perked up. This is, just as Tian Xiaoyan was about to say something. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the distance. Tian Xiaoyan and his group walked out to see a person hanging under a smoking helicopter. Help! The person screamed in terror, and Tian Mark exclaimed in surprise, that shouldn't be a performance. Then Tian Mark and Gwen Tennyson simultaneously looked at Tian Xiaoyan and Ben Tennyson. Alright, Alright, I'll transform. Can't we leave it to little Ban? Alright, alright. Tian Xiaoyan and Ben Tennyson both expressed their helplessness, then found a place where no one was watching and transformed into Stinkfly and Diamondhead. Ben Tennyson quickly flew to the person who was tied up, grabbed them, and then stabilized the helicopter's direction. Big brother. Upon hearing this, Tian Xiaoyan used his crystals to create a large crystal hand, directly grabbing the helicopter to keep it steady and prevent it from moving. Nice, it should be fine. Ben Tennyson lowered his head, just about to speak, but then noticed that the helicopter's tail rotor blades were quickly falling off. This was bad. Ben Tennyson's eyes widened as he watched the rapidly gliding blades. Tian Xiaoyan turned and saw that the blades were heading towards Tian Mark's location. He quickly rushed over, shouting, "Grandpa! Look out!" Tian Mark turned his head, mouth agape, wanting to escape, but the blades were too fast. At this moment, Gwen Tennyson's urgent desire to save her grandfather was sensed by the magic pendant stone in her hand, causing a yellow, overflowing light to appear. Blue light instantly appeared in Gwen Tennyson's eyes, and the sky energy in her hand solidified. She let out a loud shout. A blue sky energy hand directly grabbed the blades, preventing them from moving forward. Tian Mark closed his eyes, found that nothing had happened, and of course, saw a shocking scene. Xiao Wen, how did you do that? Tian Mark looked in surprise at Gwen Tennyson, who was releasing sky energy from her hand. Gwen Tennyson threw away the blades, looked at the magic pendant stone in her hand, and said with a smile, "Well, hee hee. Big brother, did you see that?" Xiao Wen's sky energy suddenly became so easy to use. Ben Tennyson flew to Tian Xiaoyan's side and said in surprise. "Don't you think the thing in her hand looks a lot like something?" Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, crossing his arms. "The thing she's wearing. Wait, could it be?" Ben Tennyson looked at the magic pendant stone and immediately thought of the lucky charm in the car. Gwen Tennyson, who had arrived at the car, searched the internet for information and pictures of similar magic pendant stones. This seems to be one of the Bazel magic pendants. But last time, when we fought Grabbing Corpse, Big Brother, he clearly only left one lucky charm. Ben Tennyson said in confusion. Little Ban, this is different from the one Grabbing Corpse used that time. This is the legendary magic pendant stone used by the magic master Bazel, so it's naturally different from ordinary ones. Tian Xiaoyan said, taking out the lucky charm to explain. What? After Tian Xiaoyan finished speaking, he noticed that the other three were looking at him in confusion. Mine was found on the computer. Big brother, how did you know? I just feel like you know a lot of things, big brother. Xiao Yan. Faced with the three people's questioning, Tian Xiaoyan's mind suddenly panicked. He frantically looked at the grimoire placed nearby and said nervously, that grimoire also has detailed information about it, that's why I know. Is that so? That's not strange then, Ben Tennyson shrugged, indicating he no longer doubted after hearing this. Tian Mark also nodded. Tian Xiaoyan breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that they no longer had suspicious expressions. Oh, it also says here that the Bazel magic pendant has the super ability to increase the user's power and skills tenfold. No wonder my sky energy could be used normally at that time. Gwen Tennyson finally understood why she could use sky energy normally. Looking at the magic pendant stone in her hand, Gwen Tennyson thought for a moment, and blue sky energy appeared in her hand again. Now this is finally fun, Gwen Tennyson said with a smile. Tian Mark and Tian Xiaoyan were happy to see her joyful expression, while Ben Tennyson was a bit dejected. The thing Gwen Tennyson now possessed was too good, wasn't it? After a while, they arrived next to a circus performance stage. Wow! The performers' wonderful acts on stage made the audience below applaud in amazement. Then, a host said some rambling words before inviting the next performer, Amen. After a delay, a scruffy man wearing a white shirt, black pants, and long yellow hair appeared. I need a volunteer performer now. Who wants to come up? Amen raised his hand and said with a closed-eyed smile. Gwen Tennyson and the others seemed to have anticipated it, looking at the empty space beside them. Ben Tennyson came up to Amen, raised his hand, and loudly declared, Ben Tennyson, willing. What's he trying to pull? Tian Mark always felt nothing good would come of it, saying helplessly. Hee hee, you still don't understand him, Grandpa. Tian Xiaoyan shook his head with a smile. What will the little boy turn into inside the box? It will definitely surprise you all, Eamon said mysteriously as he placed Ben Tennyson into a box proportionate to his body. Hee, yes, you'll be surprised too, Ben Tennyson said eerily at the last moment before the box lid closed. Ta-da. Ah. Eamon raised both hands towards the box, just about to say something and make a gesture. A dazzling green light shone through the cracks of the box. To Amon's astonished gaze, it directly burst open, revealing a brown super energy beast. Roar. Ben Tennyson roared, knocking Eamon flying. The audience below thought it was a normal performance and clapped their hands, laughing. Tian Xiaoyan and the others looked up helplessly, but the glass above suddenly melted, and a red mist directly burst into the arena. Bang! Then, it directly blasted Ben Tennyson and Eamon away, revealing the figures of Grabbing Corpse and Evil Spell Sorceress. Grabbing Corpse! Gwen Tennyson exclaimed in surprise. This guy wants to cause trouble again, watch me. Hey! Tian Xiaoyan was about to go teach Grabbing Corpse a lesson but was drawn by the evil spell sorceress beside him. Her long white hair, purple eyes, and curvaceous figure, paired with her purple wizard robe, gave her a unique cold and glamorous aura. The cool expression on her face made Tian Xiaoyan stare at her with wide eyes. His face clearly flushed, and his heart thumped loudly. It's not your turn yet. You crashed my show, Eamon, the bravest human in history, said angrily to Grabbing Corpse. I'm not interested in chatting with amateurs, get out of my way. Grabbing Corpse's pupils turned yellow, and he directly blasted Eamon away with his gaze, and the innocent Ben Tennyson nearby was also sent flying. Hand over the bezel charm stone immediately. Grabbing Corpse said sternly to everyone present below. Upon hearing this, Gwen Tennyson immediately understood that Grabbing Corpse wanted the charm stone in her hand. Do you like magic tricks? I'll let you see enough. Grabbing Corpse, seeing no response, angrily used his magic staff to create a series of explosions, causing everyone present to flee in panic. Big brother, what are you doing? Gwen Tennyson shouted as she and Tian Mark dodged attacks, seeing Tian Xiaoyan with a slightly perverted smile. Oh. Sorry. Tian Xiaoyan snapped out of it, and the sky energy in his hand condensed, directly firing a blast towards Grabbing Corpse. Bang! Grabbing Corpse, sensing it, retaliated with his magic staff, then saw Tian Xiaoyan, who was using sky energy, and said with wide eyes, it's you. You fooled magic brat. It's him. He's quite handsome, evil spell sorceress said admiringly when she heard Grabbing Corpse, looking at Tian Xiaoyan, whose hand was gathering red energy. Long time no see, Grabbing Corpse. Are you here for another beating of love? Tian Xiaoyan struck a handsome pose, pointing at Grabbing Corpse, then noticed evil spell sorceress looking his way and waved with a smile. Evil spell sorceress looked at him confusedly, also finding him quite interesting. Since you're here, the bezel charm stone must be in your hand. Hand it over. Grabbing Corpse's magic staff condensed energy, intending to attack Tian Xiaoyan. Then you guessed wrong. Grabbing Corpse, Gwen Tennyson suddenly appeared from the side, wearing her Lucky Girl outfit. Lucky Girl, and the bezel charm stone. Grabbing Corpse noticed the bezel charm stone on Gwen Tennyson's hand and immediately wanted to snatch it. Roar. Ben Tennyson suddenly pounced, directly biting his magic staff and pinning him down. Tian Xiaoyan looked at the pose from the stage, thinking it seemed a bit indecent. Evil spell sorceress, help me. Grabbing Corpse, seeing that he couldn't cast spells and his strength was quickly failing, quickly asked evil spell sorceress for help. Okay, uncle. Evil spell sorceress saw the situation, pulled out her zipper bag, and several rings flew out, directly hitting Ben Tennyson. Roar. Ben Tennyson cried out in pain and turned over. Grabbing Corpse seized the opportunity to condense energy and blasted him away. Little Ban. Gwen Tennyson, seeing this, used the power of the charm stone in her hand to condense sky energy again, creating a circular protective shield around Ben Tennyson, allowing him to land less awkwardly. It seems you've also learned some tricks, Grabbing Corpse said in surprise, looking at Gwen Tennyson's ability. Of course. Gwen Tennyson said proudly, hands on her hips. Grabbing Corpse, has anyone ever taught you? Don't keep staring at girls. Tian Xiaoyan's voice suddenly came. At this moment, he had transformed into an ice ghost and directly fired an ice ray. Ha! Grabbing Corpse used a fire explosion spell to counter Tian Xiaoyan's attack. This similar scene was no longer an equal match. Sakaja. Millstone Field, Tian Xiaoyan chanted the magic spell, his pupils glowing red, and the ray from his mouth became even stronger, directly blasting Grabbing Corpse away in his shocked gaze. ZZZZT. Grabbing Corpse stabilized himself in the air, looking at Tian Xiaoyan in shock. Your magic power has actually become so strong in such a short time. Ha 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 ha, I'm also learning. Tian Xiaoyan smiled and tilted his head, then released a huge aura from his body. This. Sweat dripped from Grabbing Corpse's forehead as he looked at Tian Xiaoyan in shock. He hadn't felt this kind of aura since he escaped from Rigidomen. Wow. Evil Spell Sorceress looked on in awe, at Tian Xiaoyan, who resembled a great sorcerer. Then Tian Xiaoyan said to Gwen Tennyson and the others, I'll deal with Grabbing Corpse, the rest is up to you. Without waiting for Gwen Tennyson and the others to react, he directly bypassed the Evil Spell Sorceress, grabbed Grabbing Corpse's shoulder, and rushed out. Hey, big brother, what's wrong with you now? Gwen Tennyson said in surprise, seeing such an abnormal Tian Xiaoyan. Roar. Ben Tennyson barked a few times at her. Although Gwen Tennyson didn't quite understand, she could infer that it meant not to worry about these things and to quickly face the guy in front of them. I'm not alone, Evil Spell Sorceress, realizing she was left alone, giggled and took out several small magic stone statues from her zipper bag. Then she threw them on the ground, where they reformed into their original shapes. This is bad. Gwen Tennyson had only been practicing for a day or two and hadn't fully gotten used to the natural power she now possessed. Let's begin. Evil Spell Sorceress raised her hands with a sneer. Ben Tennyson, however, looked at this pose and was reminded of Tian Xiaoyan when he sneered. Roar, this guy is a bit like Big Brother. Ben Tennyson howled a few times, then followed Gwen Tennyson to defeat the magic stone statues. You never learn, do you? You came to the museum to snatch the Akamita Codex before and got your ass kicked by us. Now for the Bezel Charm Stone, what exactly do you want to do? Tian Xiaoyan said, grabbing Corpse's hand and questioning him. Why should I tell my thoughts to a brat like you? Grabbing Corpse growled, gritting his teeth. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Tian Xiaoyan tilted his head indifferently, then grabbing Corpse's left hand and threw him out. Ultimate Ice Phantom, Tian Xiaoyan switched to his ultimate form. Grabbing Corpse stabilized himself, condensed energy, and fired a powerful energy cannon from his magic staff. Ha! Tian Xiaoyan exhaled ice flames, with the added boost of sky energy, once again fiercely striking Grabbing Corpse down. Bang! Grabbing Corpse was directly blasted into a pond, then stood up in a sorry state. I'm no match for him now. If only I could get the Bezel Charm Stone. Just then, he saw Evil Spell Sorceress running towards him with, Evil Spell Sorceress, hurry. Grabbing Corpse also turned to see Tian Xiaoyan flying towards them and loudly said, condensing a teleportation mist with his magic staff. Big brother, stop her. Gwen Tennyson also saw Tian Xiaoyan and wanted him to stop Evil Spell Sorceress. Okay, Tian Xiaoyan was about to agree, but then he saw Evil Spell Sorceress smiling at him. This instantly made him stop. Evil Spell Sorceress came to Grabbing Corpse's side, smiling as if she had anticipated it. At the last moment before disappearing, she blew a kiss in Tian Xiaoyan's direction. Thank you, handsome. You're really interesting. Then the red mist disappeared, and Grabbing Corpse and their figures were gone. I think I can explain, right? Tian Xiaoyan landed on the ground blankly, only to find Gwen Tennyson and the others looking at him angrily. He awkwardly raised his hands. In the old RV, Tian Mark said to Tian Xiaoyan in disbelief, I can't believe you just let her disappear in front of us like that. It was a technical error, Grandpa, Tian Xiaoyan explained nervously. You make this kind of mistake. It's laughable, Ben Tennyson said grumpily from the side. Tian Xiaoyan was speechless after hearing that, just as he was about to say something more. Gwen Tennyson, however, said coldly, you like her. As soon as these words came out, the expressions on all three of their faces immediately became wonderful, especially Tian Xiaoyan, whose face turned red like an apple as he nervously said, what are you talking about? How could I like her? You're just joking. Then why are you so nervous? Hee hee. Gwen Tennyson, for the first time seeing Tian Xiaoyan's flustered expression, let out a mischievous chuckle, finding it somewhat amusing. Oh, that reason, I can accept. Tian Mark also nodded as if he understood, no longer pursuing the matter. Oh, so that's it. Ben Tennyson also looked at Tian Xiaoyan with a mischievous smile. It's really not what you think. Tian Xiaoyan said, on the verge of tears. Hee hee. How interesting. Evil spell sorceress, holding the charm stone in her hand and thinking of Tian Xiaoyan's actions, giggled. Evil spell sorceress, what are you doing? Grabbing corpse walked over at this moment, saying sternly. Nothing, uncle. Ah. Evil spell sorceress chuckled and waved her hand, and suddenly the charm stone in her hand flew into grabbing corpse's hand. But you did well. As long as it's during the solar eclipse, I'll gain immense magic power to destroy my enemies. Haha, grabbing corpse said, laughing loudly as he looked at the charm stone in his hand. Yes, that's great, uncle, evil spell sorceress echoed grabbing corpse's words, then a hint of viciousness flashed in her eyes as she looked at grabbing corpse. Evil spell sorceress once said that the bezel charm stone's power can only be activated during a total solar eclipse, and that's when other charm stones can be reforged, Tian Mark said, driving the old RV. She also mentioned it has to be at the highest point to work, and the highest point here is only that one, Ben Tennyson added immediately. Alright then, let's go crush their plan, hee hee, Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile. You'd better. Big brother, I hope you'll be sensible, Gwen Tennyson said coldly, holding the hoverboard Tian Xiaoyan had just given her. Hee hee. Definitely, Tian Xiaoyan said awkwardly, scratching his head. But whenever he thought of evil spell sorceress, he couldn't help but hesitate. Do I really like her? Is there really such a cliché as love at first sight? Tian Xiaoyan closed his eyes, trying to clear his mind of wild thoughts, but the blush on his face revealed his current feelings. Meanwhile, grabbing corpse and evil spell sorceress arrived at the city's tallest tower. They actually happened to run into tourists who wanted to go up and visit. Grabbing corpse used the energy from his magic staff to seal their elevator doors. I don't want anyone to disturb us, grabbing corpse said to evil spell sorceress beside him. Okay, evil spell sorceress nodded. Watching the red moon already half eclipsing the sun, grabbing corpse raised the bezel charm stone. Barbara. Bastila. Sarosa. Baba. Bastila. Sarosa. Grabbing corpse's magical incantation grew louder, and the demon drop stone, initially floating in the air, created a conspicuous red moon. A scene like a black sun at the end of the world appeared before everyone. Tian Xiaoyan and the others also arrived at this moment. There's no time left, Tian Mark said, gritting his teeth. Don't worry, we have plenty of time. Proceed as planned, Tian Xiaoyan said, transforming into Ice Ghost by turning his watch. Then oh, annoying. Stupid watch. Ben Tennyson also wanted to turn into Stinkfly, but the Omnitrix was incooperative and still charging. You truly are pathetic. Gwen Tennyson said with a laugh, holding up her hoverboard. Hey, if my older brother hadn't borrowed it, I would have wanted to try it too, Ben Tennyson said, pointing at her. Alright, stop messing around. Tian Xiaoyan felt they were about to argue, so he snapped his fingers, creating a red platform beneath Tian Mark and Ben Tennyson. You should be able to control them with your thoughts. Remember not to cause too much damage, Tian Xiaoyan explained. Oh yeah, this is so cool. After hearing the explanation, Ben Tennyson followed the method and indeed flew up. I suddenly feel like mine isn't so great anymore, Gwen Tennyson said with a bitter expression, watching the two of them fly. Xiao Wen. Don't worry, you can do this like me in the future, Tian Xiaoyan comforted her. It should be soon enough. Then, they all flew up into the sky. While grabbing corpse was still chanting the spell, Gwen Tennyson floated up. Do you think I'd be fooled by you? Hurry up and return the demon drop stone. Don't be tricked. She no longer has the magic for such tricks. It's too ridiculous, evil spell sorceress quickly said when she saw Gwen Tennyson floating up. After hearing this, grabbing corpse furiously intended to blast Gwen Tennyson away, but then a cold shout came. Hey, miss me. Grabbing corpse turned his head and saw that familiar blue face before him again. Tian Xiaoyan grabbed it directly and flew towards the distant sky. Uncle grabbing corpse. Evil spell sorceress said in surprise when she saw a grabbing corpse being taken away. However, at the same time, her eyes were filled with a hint of joy. Evil spell sorceress, you're a liar. Your tricks end here. Gwen Tennyson and Tien Mark ran over, shouting loudly. Who says? Evil spell sorceress, unconcerned, threw out another stone bomb. Bang! Just as it made contact, Ben Tennyson transformed into Diamond Head, firmly blocking the attack. Now it's time to finish this, Xiao Wen. Can you follow what older brother said and resolve this ritual? Ben Tennyson looked at evil spell sorceress, then turned to Gwen Tennyson and asked. Gwen Tennyson recalled what Tian Xiaoyan had said about reversing the curse, and with determination, she nodded and said, Don't worry, leave it to me. Ben Tennyson nodded, then engaged in battle with evil spell sorceress. Rosakai. Husmud. The blue sky energy in Gwen Tennyson's hand gathered, gradually forming a basketball-sized shape. Phew, Gwen Tennyson exhaled deeply and fired it towards the red moon. The demon drop stone ritual began to go awry. Grabbing corpse, who was entangled with Tian Xiaoyan, also noticed this. No. Haha, I knew my little sister was the best, Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, seeing this scene. You fooled brat. Grabbing corpse looked at the mocking Tian Xiaoyan beside him, and a furious idea suddenly struck him. He immediately fired a beam, first repelling Tian Xiaoyan. He rushed forward. Not good, Tian Xiaoyan didn't know what grabbing corpse intended, but he knew it wouldn't be good, so he quickly rushed forward. Bang! During her spellcasting, Gwen Tennyson was directly hit by a beam, which caused her to lose her balance and almost fall. Fortunately, Tien Mark supported her. Sokka. Unica. Grabbing corpse looked at the unfinished ritual, gritted his teeth, and chanted a mysterious incantation. A laser appeared from the red moon, directly hitting grabbing corpse. Ah ah ah. Grabbing corpse roared loudly, his entire body glowing, and a sense of pressure filled the surroundings. Uncle grabbing corpse, you're using a forced curse to seize the ritual's energy, this will shorten your life. Evil spell sorceress discovered grabbing corpse's actions in surprise during Ben Tennyson's attack. This definitely isn't good, is it? Ben Tennyson said, his eyes wide at the astonishing grabbing corpse. Then he saw grabbing corpse about to attack Tien Mark and quickly went up to block his attack, but was knocked away with one blow. Grabbing corpse. Tien Xiaoyan rushed forward in anger. Grabbing corpse coldly looked at him, raised his hand, and directly unleashed magical restraint and destructive energy. Ah, Tien Xiaoyan was hit off guard. Grabbing corpse smiled cruelly. I've thought of it. Once I seize the energy within you, the side effects of the curse will be offset. I can also become the king of the world. He then increased the energy. Evil spell sorceress saw the pain Tien Xiaoyan and Ben Tennyson, who were temporarily unable to help. No, I can't. Evil spell sorceress closed her eyes, hesitated for a moment, and made a decision. Ha 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 ha, ah. Grabbing corpse was about to continue seizing the energy but felt his body's energy gradually disappearing. He turned and found evil spell sorceress activating the reversal curse. Evil spell sorceress. You betrayed me. Grabbing corpse said in disbelief. What do you think, uncle? I've also followed your orders, and I also feel I can't let him die, ha. Evil spell sorceress sneered at grabbing corpse, then completed her progress. No. Grabbing corpse, feeling the loss of energy, screamed in agony. Disappear. Tien Xiaoyan was also released from his restraints at this moment. Energy gathered in his hand, and he fired it directly at the red moon. Bang! The demon drop stone, gradually forming on the red moon, was directly destroyed. The weather also returned to normal, seeming to have regained its tranquility. Are you alright? Tien Xiaoyan flew to the ground, worriedly asking his family. We're fine, just a little pain in our hands, Tien Mark said with a smile. I thought it was just a little itchy. Gwen Tennyson scratched her back. Older brother, what about her? Ben Tennyson stood up at this moment, pointing at evil spell sorceress opposite him and asking. Let me handle it, Tien Xiaoyan said softly, closing his eyes, then walked over. It's over, uncle. Evil spell sorceress looked at the unconscious grabbing corpse with a somewhat downcast expression. What do you want? Evil spell sorceress said calmly, feeling Tien Xiaoyan approach. Having experienced Tien Xiaoyan's strength, she no longer had any intention of trying other tricks. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. Because you saved me, I'll even give you this, Tian Xiaoyan said with a gentle smile. He then threw something to Evil Spell Sorceress. Evil Spell Sorceress caught it and looked, then said in surprise, Bezel Demon Drop Stone, aren't you? Destroyed it. Perhaps. But you probably need it very much, Tian Xiaoyan said with a faint smile. Thank you. No one has ever thought so much for me, Evil Spell Sorceress said, a slight blush appearing on her face as she looked at Tian Xiaoyan's gentle face. I understand. Although you might have some bad intentions, everything you do is for a certain goal, isn't it? Tian Xiaoyan quietly came to her side. Hey, how did you know? Evil Spell Sorceress said in surprise. Don't worry. If you ever need help in the future, I will definitely help you. After all, I hope you can have a good life. Tian Xiaoyan stood in front of her, holding her hands, and said. Why are you so good to me? Evil Spell Sorceress asked, a little confused. Older brother, what are you doing? Why are you holding hands? Ben10 said in surprise, having changed back to human form. Dunce, you're really slow. Gwen Tennyson could clearly see it, but she didn't expect Ben Tennyson to be so obtuse. Ha. Xiao Yan's got away with women. Tian Mark laughed heartily, watching his grandsons flirting. I like you. Ever since you appeared before my eyes, I knew that in this world, no one is more beautiful, pure, and has a more beautiful heart than you, Tian Xiaoyan said, confessing while hugging Evil Spell Sorceress. Wait, you like me? Hold on, this is a bit too fast, I can't handle it, Evil Spell Sorceress said, her face flushed as she covered it with her hands. This was the first time she had been confessed to in her life. Alright then, when you know. I'll confess again. Tian Xiaoyan smiled and waved his hand, seeing her expression, but then Evil Spell Sorceress discovered her spellbook was gone. You actually took my spellbook. Evil Spell Sorceress said in disbelief. Tian Xiaoyan smirked, lowering his head. I really do like you, but there's no free lunch in this world, you should know that, woman. He pinched her chin, smiling devilishly. You. Get lost. Evil Spell Sorceress looked at his devilish face, feeling a bit dizzy, and directly pushed Tian Xiaoyan away. But who knew this was exactly what Tian Xiaoyan wanted? He snapped his fingers, and a red vortex appeared directly behind Evil Spell Sorceress. This is a teleportation portal, you. Ah. After discovering it, Evil Spell Sorceress tried to escape but was rendered immobile by the powerful suction. Don't worry, I won't send you anywhere else, just a little further away, Tian Xiaoyan said with a mischievous shrug. What's your name? Evil Spell Sorceress said, gritting her teeth, realizing she couldn't escape. Tian Xiaoyan. The name of your future husband, oh, Tian Xiaoyan said with a mischievous wave. Tian Xiaoyan, I won't let you off. I will definitely pester you. Evil Spell Sorceress shouted loudly at the last moment as she was sucked into the vortex. Hope, if we meet again in the future, I'll apologize to you. Tian Xiaoyan smiled helplessly. Older brother, you're amazing. Gwen Tennyson and the others walked over, astonished by Tian Xiaoyan's actions. Alright, stop laughing at me, take this. Tian Xiaoyan shook his head, then directly handed the small spellbook in his hand to Gwen Tennyson. This is, Gwen Tennyson flipped through the small book in surprise, finding that she could understand all the diagrams and language inside. The spells in the tome are too difficult for you, so how about I find you a new one? Tian Xiaoyan said, hands on hips, smiling. Although it's a bit, what to say. But still, thank you, Gwen Tennyson recalled Tian Xiaoyan's earlier actions, feeling a little awkward, but still thanked him. So you were aiming for this from the start, Tian Mark said, understanding. Grandpa, you once told me that one shouldn't do business at a loss, didn't you teach me that? Tian Xiaoyan said, sitting beside him. Tian Mark smiled awkwardly, he hadn't taught Tian Xiaoyan for this purpose. Alright, I suddenly feel like having a slushie now. Who wants to go with me? Tian Xiaoyan said playfully. Ew. No way, slushies are super disgusting, Ben Tennyson said, getting goosebumps after hearing that. You won't think that in the future, Tian Xiaoyan said with a mischievous look at the still retching Ben Tennyson. Subsequently, they descended the tall tower, returned to the old RV, and began a new journey. This time, Tian Xiaoyan and his companions received an invitation from Tian Mark's friend and even flew on a private jet. This is awesome. This is how you really spend summer vacation. A billionaire invited us to see his new restaurant, and he sent a private jet. Thank you, Grandpa. Ben10 said excitedly. Little Ban. You should know I'd do anything for you, Tian Mark said with a smile. We certainly know, Grandpa. Tian Xiaoyan said gratefully, taking a sip of water. How do you know Donovan Glassmith? You never mentioned him to us. Gwen Tennyson looked out at the surroundings, then turned to ask Tian Mark. Maybe I just didn't think of it. Tian Mark shrugged and smiled. After a while, they arrived at a rather magnificent building on the ocean. After getting off the plane, they saw an old man in a brown sweater and a child in a matching sweater, who had been waiting for them. Brother Tian Mark, long time no see, Donovan said happily, shaking Tian Mark's hand. How are you, Donovan? Tian Mark replied with a smile. Haha. I own 16 major hotels worldwide, and I'm doing quite well. I'm glad you listened to my advice and finally understand how to enjoy life, Donovan said, waving his hand. Such a strong sense of showing off, Tian Xiaoyan muttered, pursing his lips after hearing that. These are my granddaughter and grandsons. Xiao Wen, Xiao Yan, Little Ban, Tian Mark then introduced Tian Xiaoyan and the others. This is my grandson, Edwin, Donovan also introduced the little boy. Hi, Ben10 and Gwen Tennyson greeted them kindly. Oh, whatever. Edwin, however, turned his head away indifferently, and Ben10 and his companions looked at him in surprise after hearing that. Looks like a problem child, Tian Xiaoyan whispered. Ready to go underwater. Donovan said, pointing to the elevator next to them. Subsequently, the group slowly descended in a crowded elevator. Then they arrived at a machine similar to a lift, and the group got directly on it. As someone above pressed a handle, the machine slowly descended. Around the protective glass were the ocean and various marine creatures, and Ben10 and Gwen Tennyson looked around in surprise. Is it really safe here? Tian Xiaoyan said, pinching his chin while looking around. Xiao Yan. What do you mean? Donovan said with a smile. Xiao Yan probably means that it's a bit too dangerous to build a resort in the center of the Bermuda Triangle, isn't it? Tian Mark said, frowning at this moment. You're still the same as before. Always worrying about this and that, Mark. You never like to take risks, Donovan said with an unconcerned smile. Tian Xiaoyan raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? We haven't just been traveling these past few days. You've arrived at the greatest resort in history. You're going to be amazed, Donovan said, smiling and pointing forward. After they went out, they saw several environmental workers mopping the floor, and Gwen Tennyson and the other rushed over impatiently. This place won't officially open until a week later. Only a very few distinguished guests like you can experience it early. Sleeping here is much better than your old RV, isn't it, Mark? Donovan said to Tian Mark. That's not necessarily true. After all, older things have a warmer feeling, Tian Xiaoyan said first, before Tian Mark could speak. Haha. You and your grandpa are quite similar in temperament, Donovan said with an unconcerned smile. Mr. Glassmith, I've read a related report in Pacific Ocean Monthly. Are these technologically advanced glasses? Gwen Tennyson was about to ask. Cough. Edwin, however, seemed to want to stop her and coughed. Gwen Tennyson looked at him in surprise at this, then stopped talking. Donovan explained. Titanium alloy vis glass can withstand 10 times atmospheric pressure. You won't get wet unless you jump into one of the 9 pools. Glass. Made in China. Tian Xiaoyan raised an eyebrow and said. No, Donovan shook his head after thinking for a while. That's a real shame, Tian Xiaoyan shrugged. It's really amazing, Donovan, Tian Mark praised from the side. My $2 billion weren't spent in vain, but money isn't everything. Tian Xiaoyan looked at him in surprise. Your old man's meaning is, without money, absolutely nothing can be done. Grandpa, your winning motto has changed words, Edwin said coldly from the side. Just then, Ben Tennyson noticed that the emblem on Edwin's sweater was the Rampage Sumo logo. He wanted to talk to him to be friendly, but Edwin still remained cold, not wanting to interact with people. Even when Donovan praised how intelligent he was in front of Tian Mark, Edwin still didn't show any emotion. I've always trained Edwin as my heir. There must be someone to carry on, right? Donovan said with a smile. But does he really want to be your heir? May I ask, have you asked for his opinion? Tian Xiaoyan raised his hand and asked at this moment. Well, Donovan became a bit awkward at this moment, as if it was just as Tian Xiaoyan had said. Edwin looked at Tian Xiaoyan who was speaking, and for the first time, there was a different light in his eyes, as if someone finally understood him. Bang! Just then, an outside ocean worker was suddenly pulled down by a suction force. His body was facing downwards, and some seawater had already entered. What's going on? Gwen Tennyson asked Donovan, who indicated that it must have been an electromagnetic pulse that caused the seawater to circulate automatically. He'll be all right, won't he? Ben Tennyson had just finished speaking. Edwin looked at the two sharks flying towards the worker's location and grumbled, I don't know, he might run into sharks. I don't want it reported on opening day that my staff were eaten by sharks. Donovan frowned and quickly turned to operate the control panel. Seeing this, Ben Tennyson ran to a hidden spot, smiled, and rotated his watch, saying, it's time for Great Iron Jaw versus the Sharks. Then he slapped it down, and after a green flash, a small figure walked out from the hidden spot. Little odd soldier. Oh, this is annoying, Ben Tennyson covered his face helplessly. Need help. Suddenly, Tian Xiaoyan stood next to him and said with a smile. Big brother. Ben Tennyson looked at Tian Xiaoyan, who appeared next to him, in surprise. Tian Xiaoyan pulled out a phone from his pants pocket, tapped it a few times, and it transformed into a small mechanical submarine. This is the soul-snatching phone from last time. It's similar, and it should have several uses. With your current alien intelligence, you should be able to skillfully control its functions, and there's also. Before Tian Xiaoyan could finish speaking, Ben Tennyson piloted the submarine and jumped into the sea. All right, let's go. Ben Tennyson cheered with his hands raised in the submarine. This kid, hee. Tian Xiaoyan shook his head helplessly and smiled. Then, in the sea, just as the shark was about to attack the worker, an iron fist directly hit its eye, making it retreat a few steps. Ben Tennyson manipulated the joystick in the cockpit and said with a smile, oh yeah, stinky shark, see how powerful I am. Then there was a scene of a small submarine with two giant arms grabbing and beating the shark. What is this? Wait, where's your cousin? And your brother? Edwin looked at the scene before him and also noticed. Little Ben. He went to the bathroom. As for this, it should be a tool for protective measures that Mr. Donovan just mentioned. Tian Xiaoyan walked over and said with a smile. Really? Although it makes some sense, Grandpa doesn't seem to have made anything like this. Edwin was half believing, half doubting Tian Xiaoyan's words, but he tried to accept it. A moment later, the worker was thrown up by Ben Tennyson. Tian Mark firmly grabbed him and pulled him up, asking worriedly, are you all right? The worker nodded, indicating he was probably fine. Ben Tennyson changed the submarine's form, climbed onto the deck, and quietly walked to the corner. He saw Tian Xiaoyan, who had been waiting for him, smiling as he disembarked from the submarine. Then, after a red light flashed, he transformed back into his human form. Awesome, big brother. Can I play with it too sometime? Ben Tennyson felt that the experience was incredibly satisfying and pleaded. Tian Xiaoyan looked at him, then snapped his fingers. The phone automatically returned to its original shape and jumped into his hand. No, little Ben. As the saying goes, the experience card is only valid for 1 day, and you only had the time just now. Why? Only just now? Ben Tennyson asked, puzzled. Recharge. Tian Xiaoyan turned his head and winked. Ben Tennyson looked at him speechlessly. Then Donovan rushed over and, hearing what Edwin had said, was a bit confused, but thankfully no one was hurt, so he didn't pursue it further. A moment later, Donovan smiled and said, Edwin, why don't you show Xiao Yan and the others around here? Let me and their grandpa catch up. Edwin immediately glared unhappily upon hearing this. Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson were also not getting along with him. Who could blame him for being so cold just now? Mark, it's a pity you didn't listen to my advice when we were penniless 30 years ago. Otherwise, while I was traveling the world and enjoying myself, you wouldn't have been fixing pipes all this time. Oh, don't say that. Plumbers are pretty good too. The two old men walked off into the distance, chatting and laughing. Alright. Edwin, is there anywhere we can visit? Tian Xiaoyan broke the awkward atmosphere first, saying with a smile. I guess so. Edwin, who had developed some goodwill due to Tian Xiaoyan's earlier words, said after a moment of thought. He then led the way, and Tian Xiaoyan also motioned for the two rather unwilling guys behind him to follow. Subsequently, they arrived next to an enormous swimming pool. Awesome. Ben10 said excitedly when he saw the swimming pool. Edwin said indifferently that it was alright. He usually practiced swimming there with his swimming coach. You can swim? Gwen Tennyson asked in surprise. Yes, Grandpa says it helps train the mind, Edwin said with a helpless expression. But it sounds like you don't really like it, Tian Xiaoyan said, analyzing Edwin once again. He doesn't often listen to my opinions, Edwin said somewhat dejectedly after hearing that, then continued walking into the distance. Big brother, I always feel like this kid is a bit strange, Ben Tennyson whispered, leaning close to Tian Xiaoyan. Gwen Tennyson also nodded in agreement. Tian Xiaoyan said, he just has a bit of a mental problem that needs solving, but he's lucky to have met me. Why? Gwen Tennyson and Ben Tennyson asked, puzzled. Tian Xiaoyan raised his thumb and pointed to himself, indicating that he was a master psychologist, hee. Afterward, Edwin led them to a somewhat magnificent submarine that was suspended. This submarine is called the Deep-Sea God Roar, and it belongs to my grandpa, Edwin said with a smile, looking at it as if there was some connection. So cool, Ben Tennyson said, clenching his fist and smiling. Want to go on a deep-sea trip? Edwin suddenly turned to the three of them and asked. Ben Tennyson, being an adventure enthusiast, was the first to agree. Gwen Tennyson, however, was a bit worried if anything would go wrong. What's your decision, Yan Ji? Edwin suddenly turned his gaze to Tian Xiaoyan, who was still looking around. Me. Of course, I'll try my best, Edwin. Tian Xiaoyan, who was suddenly called Zhe, was stunned for a moment, then smiled and patted his shoulder. All right. Edwin cheered, feeling his words being approved. He's really wrapped around your finger, isn't he? Gwen Tennyson said, grumbling to Tian Xiaoyan. No choice, I have a way with kids, Tian Xiaoyan shrugged. Meanwhile, Tian Mark was led by Donovan to a development device factory. Donovan said that all the electricity used here came from deep-sea volcanoes. Just as Tian Mark was about to exclaim how clever he was, he noticed a strange device emitting purple light ahead, and workers around it typing on keyboards to control it. Hey, what's that behind there? Tian Mark frowned, feeling that this thing in front of him was not simple at all. It's nothing, just a backup generator. Look at this, Donovan said, his eyes momentarily flustered after hearing that, then he calmly changed the subject and gestured to the personnel next to him with his eyes. Click. They understood and operated it, but as the surrounding lights gradually brightened the scene. Donovan continued, we have ample power to make the exterior very bright, visible from 500 feet above sea level. He then led Tian Mark to an extended platform. This is my masterpiece, the Deep-Sea God Roar. Donovan looked through the glass tank in front, intending to introduce it, but found that only a few chains remained, and the ocean passage below was open. Edwin. Donovan immediately realized that Edwin was responsible for this. Tian Mark also understood that Tian Xiaoyan and his companions were also on that submarine at this moment. Inside the submarine, Tian Xiaoyan and his companions were marveling at the strange marine creatures around them. Wow! These deep-sea fish look like prehistoric creatures, Gwen Tennyson exclaimed. This one is Great Iron Jaw, hee, Ben Tennyson said with a smile, pointing to a flounder with a rather large mouth. It does look a bit like it, Tian Xiaoyan nodded. As long as you like it, Edwin said, driving the submarine and turning his head with a smile. Edwin, why did you seem so cold from the beginning? Ben Tennyson suddenly brought up a question. Edwin's expression became somewhat dejected after hearing that. Gwen Tennyson saw this and immediately got off her seat and hit Ben Tennyson hard on the forehead. Ow! Ben Tennyson covered his forehead in pain. Tian Xiaoyan, who was watching the deep-sea fish from behind, said indifferently, it's probably because his childhood was quite restricted, without much fun, right? Quote exclamation mark quote. Edwin looked at Tian Xiaoyan in surprise, wondering how the other person knew. Tian Xiaoyan turned his head, revealing scarlet eyes, and said with a smile, I guessed. He had just secretly probed Edwin's memories with magic. How to put it? It was normal, but just too restricted, as if he grew up under his grandpa's plan. And between them, there weren't many happy memories. The reason I acted that way before was because my grandpa and I never had a good relationship. He always liked to hear what he wanted to hear and wasn't good at listening to my true opinions. When I saw how happy you all were with your grandpa, I felt a hint of jealousy. Edwin finally decided to speak up. So that's how it was, Gwen Tennyson said, covering her mouth. Edwin, do you know? The fault isn't with your grandpa, but with you not being brave enough to truly express yourself. You should seriously talk to your grandpa and tell him your real thoughts, instead of just going along with his plans and such, understand? Tian Xiaoyan came up to him, patted his head, and encouraged him. Can I really do it? Edwin asked tentatively, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Of course, we all believe in you. Tian Xiaoyan smiled and nodded, then turned to look at Gwen Tennyson and the others. Of course. Even though you're a bit strange, I support you. They all put aside their past grievances and offered Edwin words of encouragement. Thank you, I should try. Ah. Edwin was happily about to express himself when the sound of glass shattering in front of him forced him to turn his head. Bang! A tentacle monster, resembling a modified mechanical demon, used the steel mouth at its bottom to forcefully ram the submarine's glass. There were quite a few of them, surrounding him. Edwin, accelerate and go back, Tian Xiaoyan said quickly. Edwin maneuvered the submarine, making a sharp turn and shaking off some tentacles, but they relentlessly stuck back on. Great Iron Jaw, go. And if you transform into a super energy beast, you're done for. Ben Tennyson, seeing the situation, turned around, entered the submersible device, and then spun his watch, warning him. As a green light flashed, his wish came true, and he transformed into Great Iron Jaw. Bang! 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 Ben Tennyson dived into the sea, fiercely attacking and knocking off some of the tentacle monsters, but there were still many of them. Brother! Gwen Tennyson looked at the somewhat hesitant Tian Xiaoyan sitting in the chair and quickly said. Grandpa, we're under attack. Edwin also grabbed the walkie-talkie, desperately calling for help. Seeing the overwhelming number of tentacle monsters, Tian Xiaoyan sighed, his sky energy surging, and he floated up, saying, I'll throw little Ben up later. You all accelerate and move forward, don't wait for me. Wait, brother. Gwen Tennyson saw Tian Xiaoyan create a sky energy shield above his head and then fly out, saying worriedly. Yan Ji. What was that just now? Edwin also saw the scene and asked in shock. Edwin, I hope you won't tell anyone, but it doesn't really matter anyway. Gwen Tennyson tried to explain but realized there was nothing to argue about and simply gave up. In the sea, Tian Xiaoyan's eyes glowed, and the sky energy in his hands transformed into two long swords as he looked at the dense tentacle monsters in front of him. Boom! In just an instant, Tian Xiaoyan appeared behind them, and a moment later, the previously active tentacle monsters were directly cut in half. Cool. Ben Tennyson, who was entangled with a tentacle monster behind him, exclaimed in awe at the shocking sight. Little Ben, you go back first. Tian Xiaoyan shot a beam of light from his hand, piercing the tentacle monster in front of Ben Tennyson, and then, without waiting for his response, threw him back into the submarine. Brother, I can't just go in like this. Ben Tennyson, unable to struggle due to the immense force, said in a panic. Don't worry, Tian Xiaoyan tilted his head and snapped his fingers, and a penetrating energy appeared on Ben Tennyson's body, accompanied by a flashing red light as he transformed back into his human form. Ah! Ben Tennyson phased through the submarine and fell directly onto the floor. Hey, you're back. Gwen Tennyson smiled and greeted Ben Tennyson when he returned. That's enough. Can't brother be a little gentler? Ben Tennyson stood up with a bitter face and complained. I have a lot of questions for you, but for now, let's accelerate. Edwin's confusion grew as he saw Ben Tennyson thrown in, but he still obeyed Tian Xiaoyan's previous words. Bang! With a direct spin and burst, they escaped from there. Tian Xiaoyan let out a long breath and turned around to find a city-like multitude of tentacle monsters in front of him. Party starts now. Tian Xiaoyan's eyes glowed red, and he smiled sinisterly. Boom! Listening to the explosions coming from afar, Edwin grew increasingly curious about Tian Xiaoyan's family. And they were gradually approaching the restaurant. On the other side, Donovan clenched his walkie-talkie and said angrily, Edwin, you should know that the deep-sea god roar cannot be driven away casually. I apologize, Grandpa, but we're being attacked by unknown creatures. Edwin explained helplessly. What nonsense are you talking about? Donovan's anger flared even more upon hearing such a ridiculous statement. Just as he was about to lose his temper, he was attracted by Tien Mark's exclamation, that's not nonsense. He then pointed his right hand to the other side. Donovan immediately saw a large group of tentacle monsters approaching his restaurant. No. Donovan said, gritting his teeth, as if he had some kind of premonition upon seeing these tentacle monsters. After a while, Donovan organized the staff to evacuate quickly. Just as he was about to ask Tien Mark to go with them, Tien Mark refused without hesitation, saying, I will never abandon my precious grandchildren. Bang! 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 Seeing the tentacle monsters above constantly hitting the glass with their iron mouths, Tien Mark frowned and said, we must quickly get the remaining people to evacuate as well. Aliens causing chaos in my restaurant. My 5-star rating is going to be ruined. Donovan said helplessly. Grandpa, we're almost there, Edwin's voice came through at this moment. Tien Mark and Donovan came to the center of the submarine's water gate. Prepare to close the water gate, Tien Mark said quickly as he saw the deep-sea god roar getting closer and closer. Donovan was also on the control panel, ready to go, and then, at 0.05 seconds, Tien Mark shouted loudly, close it quickly. Bang! Donovan activated the switch, and as the deep-sea god roar's body fully entered, a tentacle monster was also caught and severed. Little Ban. Xiao Wen. I'm glad you're okay, where's Xiao Yan? Tien Mark hugged them both, showing his concern after they disembarked. Well, X2. Just as the two of them were about to say something, Tien Xiaoyan suddenly appeared beside them, smiling and saying, missed me. Ah. How did you appear? Donovan was the first to be startled and took a few steps back. Nothing, just went for a bath, but it might not be clean, Tien Xiaoyan said indifferently, wiping some oil from his body. Ding! Just then, an alarm sounded. Donovan understood that the glass must have been broken and seawater was coming in. I knew I shouldn't have taken that thing, Edwin said to Donovan with a resentful look. Don't talk nonsense, Edwin, Donovan immediately stared at him upon hearing this. What exactly is it, Donovan? Tien Mark also looked at Donovan angrily at this moment. I really can't believe it's related to that thing, Donovan was about to speak when a hidden energy source discovered. Right below this bay, Tien Xiaoyan spoke first at this moment. How did you know? Donovan looked at Tien Xiaoyan in surprise. Tien Xiaoyan's scarlet eyes revealed everything, and Edwin also said loudly, Grandpa, you should let go of that so-called reputation and tell things clearly. Bang! 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 However, due to the invasion of the tentacle monsters, Donovan was forced to lead Tien Mark and the others to a more secret and protected area. Finally, he reluctantly recounted everything related to that energy source. Extracting energy from the deep-sea volcano was simply not ideal. Just when he thought he would become a laughingstock, he discovered this unparalleled energy, which is why. You're really asking for trouble. Tien Mark said helplessly to Donovan after hearing the whole story. Now those aliens should be coming to reclaim it, Gwen Tennyson said. I didn't want to either, this was just a means to preserve my reputation. Donovan expressed his helplessness. That's enough. I'm tired of you doing such annoying things for the sake of this so-called reputation. Can't you just finish everything honestly? Edwin finally erupted, shouting loudly at Donovan. Edwin. Donovan had never seen Edwin so angry before. Following that, Edwin recounted what had happened in recent years. Donovan felt somewhat ashamed after listening. Edwin. Well done, leave the rest to me, Tien Xiaoyan exclaimed at Edwin's growth, smiling and patting his shoulder. Yan Ge. How do you plan to solve it? Edwin looked at Tien Xiaoyan confusedly after hearing him. Everyone also looked at him with confusion. Tien Xiaoyan didn't speak, instead, he smiled and looked at Donovan. Edwin or this so-called underground submarine, which one will you choose, Mr. Donovan? Donovan heard him and said somewhat angrily, what are you talking about? Of course it's, Edwin, thinking he knew the answer, turned his head, not wanting to hear, but Edwin is my precious grandson. I can't let him handle the crisis, Donovan said firmly. Grandpa. Edwin looked at Donovan in surprise, and Donovan also indicated that he had come to his senses. Finally, the grandfather and grandson hugged happily. Tian Xiaoyan, seeing this harmonious scene, also smiled and said, then I'll leave the rest to little Ben and me. Grandpa, you and Donovan, and Xiao Wen, take the escape device and go ashore first. What do you want to do? Tian Mark asked confusedly. Tian Xiaoyan looked at the ocean restaurant with a mischievous smile and said, I'm going to use that energy to blow it up. I've wanted to do this for a long time, just hearing the boasting earlier, I couldn't stand it. Following Tian Xiaoyan's repeated requests, Tian Mark reluctantly agreed. Then, after Tian Mark left, the tree-like tentacle monsters directly broke through the door, glaring at Tian Xiaoyan and Ben10. Are you ready? Tian Xiaoyan asked, holding up the Ultimatrix. Bring it on, Ben10 also held up the Omnitrix and said with a smile. The two of them simultaneously spun their watches and slammed them down, and in an instant, 4 arms and ultimate swampfire appeared. Ah! Ben10 grabbed 2 tentacle monsters, using them as weapons to smash them around, directly destroying a large group of enemies. Bang! 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 Tian Xiaoyan, on the other hand, used nuclear blast flames to burn down one tentacle monster after another. Just as a tentacle monster was about to launch a sneak attack from the air, Tian Xiaoyan turned around, smiled, pulled out a blue bomb, and threw it up. Take that. Boom. A large area of tentacle monsters was directly blown to pieces. Tian Xiaoyan, seeing that the situation was almost handled, called Ben10 to his side, then manipulated the flames with his hand, dug a passage below, and jumped down. How will we make this energy explode later? Ben10 asked while running. You cover me later, I'll make it explode, Tian Xiaoyan said, holding a device. Soon after, they arrived near the purple energy sphere. Bang! Just as they were distracted, an enemy tried to sneak attack Ben10, who charged 2 punches and directly shattered it. It's up to you, Ben10 said, turning to look at the dense tentacle monsters behind him. Tian Xiaoyan here switched to Little Odd Soldier, using the soul-stealing phone to transform into a human-sized robot. Click. Click. He pressed the device in his hand near the purple energy sphere, and after some operations, it was finally completed. He then saw Ben10 transform back into human form and frantically escape to this spot. Little Ban. You go first. Tian Xiaoyan transformed back into human form and extended his hand, filling Ben10's body with sky energy. Brother. Ben10 exclaimed, disappearing at the last moment, shouting. Tian Xiaoyan looked at the tentacle monsters about to pounce, tilting his head crazily and smiling sinisterly, Die, you fools. Rumble. With the activation of the device, the purple energy sphere directly exploded, taking the entire underground ocean restaurant with it, and a brilliant mushroom cloud appeared in the ocean above. It disappeared. Just as Ben10 and the others frantically searched for Tian Xiaoyan's figure, Tian Xiaoyan, surrounded by a red glowing sphere, floated up from the sea surface and came to them, smiling. Ben10 and the others, overcome with joy, rushed to hug Tian Xiaoyan. Perhaps I really should learn. Mark, Donovan murmured, looking at the harmonious scene of Tian Xiaoyan and the others. It's not too late now, Grandpa, Edwin said, holding his hand and smiling. Randomly, Donovan expressed his gratitude to Tian Mark for making him realize. It's nothing, it's just that my grandson is better at solving things. After all, Tian Mark raised an eyebrow and glanced at Tian Xiaoyan. He's a person who will never fail X2. Ben10 and Gwen10 said in unison, making Tian Xiaoyan a bit embarrassed. Yan Ge. Can we see each other again in the future? Edwin came up to Tian Xiaoyan and asked. Tian Xiaoyan's eyes darted around, then he smiled and replied, Of course there's a chance, see you next time. Edwin smiled, then followed Donovan and walked away. Alright, now it's time to return to where we belong, Tian Mark said, smiling as he looked at the old RV in the distance. Okay, Grandpa. They all nodded in unison. The matter was resolved, and they had once again overcome a difficult situation. One midnight, while Ben10 was sleeping, the Omnitrix on his hand emitted a brief purple light. I must escape from here. A strange sound emanated in the air, yet it quietly disappeared. In the afternoon, a child climbed a very tall tree to retrieve his toy. After he joyfully got his toy, he realized how high he had climbed. Ah! Help! I don't dare to come down. The child shouted, clinging to a branch. Then why did you climb so high? Don't be afraid, we'll help you down. Gwen Tennyson's voice suddenly came through. The child looked down and saw her and Ben Tennyson below. Ben Tennyson looked at her in surprise. Gwen Tennyson implied that he should be the one to save him, as she didn't have a watch that could transform at will. You still have sky energy. Besides, why can't we call Big Brother? Ben Tennyson reluctantly walked forward, turned his watch, and tapped it, then transformed into Super Energy Beast. Stop talking nonsense, Gwen Tennyson said, hands on her hips, looking at him. Then Ben Tennyson climbed the tree trunk, flipped over, and came behind the child, reassuringly saying, don't be afraid, I'm here to save you. Oh my. A super energy beast that can talk is too bizarre, but something even more bizarre was yet to come. The child, who had been trembling, stopped shaking, and a strange sound came from his mouth. Down. I don't want to go down. He suddenly turned his head, and his originally clear eyes became a grotesque face with a single purple eye. I want out, he said to Ben Tennyson in a strange way. Ben Tennyson's eyes widened as he leaned against the tree. Ah. Don't bother me. But who knew, with his cry, the world before him, including the strange child, became ethereal, and the tree he was on also became eerily white. Ah! Ben Tennyson turned his head and found that the tree he was leaning against had turned into Ghost Freak's large face. You can't escape my grasp. Ghost Freak said coldly, then grabbed Ben Tennyson. Surrender, hero. Wasting your superpower, wanting to do a good deed every day, let me out. Ghost Freak shouted loudly while holding Ben Tennyson. Then, under Ben Tennyson's terrified gaze, he was violently thrown out. At this point, the protagonist of Ben 10 vanished into nothingness. The end. But I'm sorry, that was just a nightmare for Ben Tennyson. In reality, he screamed and fell out of bed. Ah! Ben Tennyson sat up from the floor, still muttering, and then saw Tian Xiaoyan sitting in a chair drinking water. What are you doing? Tian Xiaoyan asked in surprise, holding a water cup. He had originally just been unable to sleep and wanted to sit and drink water, but Ben Tennyson's sudden fall startled him. I think I had a nightmare, but I can't remember it, Ben Tennyson said, rubbing his head, trying to recall, but the words on the tip of his tongue suddenly disappeared. Then don't think about it, hurry back to sleep. We still have to travel tomorrow. Tian Xiaoyan listened, thought for a moment, and then quickly said. I seem to have seen a white evil ghost, did I think wrong? Ben Tennyson mumbled as he climbed into bed, but it was this low murmur that Tian Xiaoyan heard. White evil ghost. Jiska is coming out, so we need to prepare. This guy is a bit difficult to deal with. Tian Xiaoyan immediately thought of the episode in Ben 10 where Ghost Freak escaped. After thinking for a bit, he also climbed into bed and went to sleep. The next day, on the road, Old RV was driving, and Ben Tennyson was still a bit dazed from that nightmare. You secretly ate 2 big bowls of cornflakes in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep, it would be strange if you didn't have nightmares, Gwen Tennyson said teasingly, holding a school brochure. HMPH. It's better than you wanting to go to that kind of school full of bookworms. This place is all bookworms. Ben Tennyson immediately snatched the brochure from her hand, displeased. Give it back to me, and I warn you, little Ban. Never do anything at school that would embarrass me. Bancroft Academy is the best school in the world. Gwen Tennyson and Ben Tennyson were fighting over it. Alright, you two stop quarreling. We'll be there soon. By the way, Xiao Yan, what exactly are you doing? Tian Mark stopped them and turned to look at Tian Xiaoyan, who was constantly tinkering with the Ultimatrix. Nothing, I just feel a little itchy. Tian Xiaoyan turned his body around and replied with a smile. Click. Click. The Ultimatrix began to emit red light, then countless alien hero figures flashed, and Tian Xiaoyan smiled slightly, finally done. Later, they arrived at a magnificent school, where a female student with long blue hair and a brown school uniform led Tian Xiaoyan and the others. As they walked, she constantly boasted about the school's excellent educational standards, but many overconfident people wanted to apply, which was simply pathetic. Upon hearing this, Gwen Tennyson thought she had a chance and began to boast about her own excellent achievements, but no matter how she described them. The female student's reply was, "Oh, you're so excellent." Then she bit her lip and turned to walk slowly again. Ha ha ha, Ben Tennyson chuckled, seeing Gwen Tennyson's deflated expression. Little sister, don't take it to heart, you really are excellent. Perhaps this school isn't quite suitable for you, Tian Xiaoyan said, putting an arm around her shoulder to comfort her. Thank you, big brother, but let's talk about it later. Gwen Tennyson looked up and smiled in response, then continued to follow. Just as they were about to leave, Ben Tennyson suddenly heard a strange cry. Little band tilde. Little band tilde tilde. This familiar yet terrifying sound made Ben Tennyson look around in horror. Excuse me, what's wrong with you? Suddenly, the female student's voice rang out. Ben Tennyson then realized that 4 people were looking at him. Ben Tennyson immediately changed the subject and said, "Well, I was just wondering why there are so many people at school during the summer vacation." The female student smiled and clasped her hands, saying, "They're attending our newest summer remedial course." Afterward, they all began to enter other places that needed to be visited. However, during this tour, as they passed by a wall shadow, Ben Tennyson's shadow suddenly transformed into the shape of Ghostfreak again. Ah, maybe I'm really sleep deprived, Ben Tennyson said helplessly, staring wide-eyed at his original shadow on the wall. Then, they arrived at a science room. The female student said, "This is our science laboratory." Wow! This is an electron microscope. Gwen Tennyson exclaimed in surprise, seeing the largest scientific instrument before her. She wanted to use it, but the female student refused without hesitation. Gwen Tennyson was a bit discouraged, and Ben Tennyson was causing trouble again at this moment. He came to a glass beaker containing scientific liquid, and as he watched, the beaker suddenly boiled, revealing a purple ghostly eye that said, "Let me out." Ah! Don't bother me. Ben Tennyson immediately wanted to knock the beaker away. Slap! Tian Xiaoyan firmly grabbed his hand. Ben Tennyson turned his head and saw Tian Xiaoyan smiling and saying, "If little Ban's hand is itchy, I can help him scratch it." Exactly. Go outside and take care of it. Gwen Tennyson had thought a tragedy was about to happen, but luckily Tian Xiaoyan stopped it, and she thanked Tian Xiaoyan. Bang! Suddenly, the tails of countless scientific instruments caught fire and exploded. Little Ban, what are you doing? Tian Mark thought it was the neurotic Ben Tennyson's doing. It's not me, it's Ghostfreak. Ben Tennyson finally remembered the content of his dream from last night and shouted loudly. Bang! Just then, another loud noise came from outside. Everyone went out to see and found a security guard being thrown out in the school gymnasium. Mr. Karlov, what is this? The female student looked in surprise at the bruised security guard before her. Don't go in, there's a monster inside. The security guard shakily pointed forward with his finger, then his neck twisted, and he fainted. You all hurry and escape. Now is not the time for school applications. The female student, knowing this was a very dangerous situation, did not want to get involved. She turned to Gwen Tennyson and the others, then ran away herself. All right, this school is really strange. Gwen Tennyson also felt helpless at the scene they were witnessing. We have to go, Ben Tennyson said first, then turned and ran towards the gymnasium. Little Ban. Oh, let's follow him too, Tian Mark said helplessly. Ha ha ha, that guy is so embarrassing. Suddenly, a familiar laugh reached Ben Tennyson's ears as he arrived. Ben Tennyson looked closely, and it was the circus freaks. It's you again, Ben Tennyson immediately said, attracting their attention. The 3 freaks all looked and immediately spotted Ben Tennyson. It's that brat who ruined Zombozo, Bald Overlord said in surprise. I followed him everywhere, enjoying life, but you ruined everything. Now it's time for revenge, Chong Fanb said, gritting her teeth and glaring at Ben Tennyson. Flame Man will burn you to a crisp. Ben Tennyson rotated the Omnitrix, selected the pattern, and just as he was about to tap it, a purple light flashed. After a green light flashed, Ghostfreak, in the shape of a white ghost, appeared. It's Ghostfreak. I didn't even learn from you. Ben Tennyson looked at his body in surprise, but the next second, his head tilted, and the purple ghostly eye in his eye flickered with a strange light. Hee hee, he said with an eerie laugh, looking at them, but Sour Stink was not afraid at all and said disdainfully, "You're so awesome, kid." Suddenly, Bald Overlord next to him turned the nearby seats into a pile of wooden fragments and threw them forcefully at Ghost Freak. Bang! Seeing the attack succeed, Sour Stink spat out green venom, causing the fragments to melt directly. "The three of us aren't afraid of ghosts at all, ha 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 ha," Sour Stink said mockingly. Ha 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 ha. The other two also laughed along with him, but the next second, Ghost Freak phased out, floated past the attacking fragments, and said coldly, "Give me your life." Then he began to attack them. Tian Xiaoyan, who had arrived at the gymnasium, also saw the scene of Ben10 transformed into Ghost Freak. "It's those circus freaks," Tian Mark said in surprise. "They must have escaped from prison," Gwen Tennyson immediately added. Only Tian Xiaoyan stared intently at Ghost Freak after Ben10's transformation. Ha! Sour Stink spat out mucus, intending to attack Ghost Freak. Ghost Freak phased into the ground, then launched himself, knocking him into the wall. Ah! Chong Fanv used her hair to tie Ghost Freak's arm. Ghost Freak gave her a cold glance and laughed eerily, ignorance. Then, he quickly phased into the ground, pulled her hair, and slammed her into the floor. When Ghost Freak materialized again and looked at them, Bald Overlord tried to sneak attack, but Ghost Freak suddenly used his invisibility ability to make him unseen. Ah! Just as Bald Overlord was searching for Ghost Freak's whereabouts, Ghost Freak suddenly plunged his hand into his head, causing him to scream in agony. "I've never seen him so violent," Tian Mark said in surprise, looking at Ghost Freak's cruel attack methods after Ben10's transformation. "This feeling is like it's not little Ban." Gwen Tennyson also looked at this white evil ghost before her with a fearful expression. Patience, Tian Xiaoyan understood that the guy in front of him was not little Ban, but if he were to do anything to disrupt the plot's development, Jiska might not be able to escape the Omnitrix and would continue to plague Ben Tennyson. "Oh, aren't those my lovely family members?" Ghost Freak said, putting Bald Overlord down, then looking at Tian Xiaoyan and the others with a cold laugh. "Are you really little Ban?" Gwen Tennyson asked tentatively. "Otherwise, hee." Ghost Freak tilted his head and sneered, but his gaze suddenly fell on the Ultimatrix in Tian Xiaoyan's hand. Just as Ghost Freak was about to act, an attack sent him directly to the wall. Bald Overlord, carrying the unconscious Sour Stink and Chong Fanv, quickly escaped through the back door. "It seems they haven't learned their lesson," Ghost Freak said indifferently, then quickly passed through the door. "It's time." Tian Xiaoyan's eyes narrowed, then he quickly followed. "Big brother, where are you going?" Gwen Tennyson asked loudly, seeing Tian Xiaoyan suddenly run off. "I'm going to bring little Ban back. You and Grandpa go back to the car first," Tian Xiaoyan said, turning his head. "Xiao Yan, what exactly are you doing?" Tian Mark asked, puzzled. Ghost Freak was in the dim corridor, searching for the freak's whereabouts, when the Omnitrix symbol on his chest suddenly flashed red. Ghost Freak's eyes widened, and he knew what was about to happen, shouting loudly, "No! I don't want to go back." But with the red light flashing, Ben Tennyson's figure appeared in the corridor, saying with a bitter face, "Great, that evil ghost is finally gone." Just when he thought it was over, a familiar voice made his hair stand on end again. "Oh, you don't like me, that's delightful." Ben Tennyson turned around and saw Ghost Freak, with the Omnitrix symbol, appearing face to face before him. "Finally, I can face you." Ghost Freak leaned into his face and said loudly. Ben Tennyson looked at him with wide eyes. Then he said in disbelief, "This is impossible, you are not you, I am you." "Really? Last time, during the Diamond Head incident, you seemed to say the same thing. I was never you, and you were never me. Our to Rui consciousness exists within 0.01 DNA. When the Omnitrix took my DNA, I was trapped within it, now I can finally reveal my true form." After the ice ghost finished explaining, a pair of sharp claws suddenly appeared on his white arm. Ah! Under Ben Tennyson's horrified gaze, the ice ghost tore open his body, revealing a twisted purple form, and his head was even tilted. "That's disgusting. You're even uglier than before. What do you want?" Although Ben Tennyson was somewhat shocked, he still shouted loudly. "I need the Omnitrix's power to restore my whole body. There's only one way, and that's to possess you. You'll get to experience what it's like to be trapped in someone else's body." The ice ghost gradually approached Ben Tennyson. Ben Tennyson gritted his teeth, only to find that the Omnitrix was still charging at that moment. Jiska. You're dreaming. Tian Xiaoyan's voice came. They all looked over to see Tian Xiaoyan, transformed into amphibian, leaping over and directly landing on Jiska, then releasing electricity from his hands. Ah ah ah. Jiska cried out in pain, then forcefully pulled Tian Xiaoyan off. It's you. How do you know me? Jiska's body was smoking. He looked up and realized it was Tian Xiaoyan, but what surprised him was how Tian Xiaoyan knew his name. That's none of your business. As a ghost, just disappear obediently, Tian Xiaoyan said coldly, with electricity flashing in his hand. Big brother. Ben Tennyson looked at the suddenly appearing Tian Xiaoyan with surprise. Little Ban. You go back first, leave this to me, Tian Xiaoyan said, turning his head. However, it was this turn that Jiska seized the opportunity, extending his hands and quickly grabbing Tian Xiaoyan. Bang! Tian Xiaoyan reacted quickly, extending his hands in response, and the two began a battle of strength. Your strength is formidable, but you're no match for me, Jiska said coldly, then increased his strength and slowly pushed Tian Xiaoyan away. Is that so? Tian Xiaoyan sneered, then grabbed Jiska and threw him out, pinning him down. Ah! Sunlight. Jiska's body began to smoke from the sunlight, looking as if he was about to disappear. It's still morning, did you forget, freak? Tian Xiaoyan grabbed him and sneered. Jiska endured the pain and manipulated nearby stones, making them smash towards Tian Xiaoyan. Bang! Tian Xiaoyan might have forgotten this guy could do that. He turned and shot a blast of electricity at the stone, shattering it. He looked down and Jiska had already disappeared. Tian Xiaoyan changed back to human form and punched the ground hard. Ben Tennyson, noticing these anomalies, couldn't help but ask curiously, Big brother, what exactly happened? This, Tian Xiaoyan heard his question and also noticed Gwen Tennyson and the others rushing over from behind. He immediately brainstormed a reason. On the other side, the escaping Jiska said with a cold face, that Tian Xiaoyan knows my weakness. I can't fight him alone. I need subordinates. Then he sneered when he saw a boy playing the saxophone, and quickly possessed him. The bodies of these trash earthlings are still useful. Jiska said with a laugh, feeling the ability to walk in the sunlight. Meanwhile, in the old RV, Tian Xiaoyan explained why he knew the ice ghost's name and his weakness. You mean, you had a dream. In the dream, someone named Dr. Maodun told you all the information. Tian Mark asked doubtfully. Exactly, it was him, Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, thinking it was best to just blame Dr. Maodun. Achoo! Dr. Maodun, traveling in a time-space rift far away, suddenly sneezed, wondering who was thinking of him. But can such a dream really happen? It's too mysterious, isn't it? Gwen Tennyson said with some disbelief. I believe it. Last night, the dream I had was about the ice ghost, but I forgot. Ben Tennyson, however, believed Tian Xiaoyan's words without hesitation. Tian Xiaoyan looked at him with surprise, glad that little Ban was helping. Then Ben Tennyson recounted what Jiska wanted to do to him. So that means the opponent definitely won't let little Ban go, Tian Mark said, stroking his chin in thought. Hey! Grandpa, Big brother, and little Ban, look at this. Gwen Tennyson suddenly turned the computer around, and what appeared on the screen was a video of 10 students being kidnapped by circus freaks. Jiska did it. He must be trying to lure little Ban or me out with this. Tian Xiaoyan immediately understood this crude tactic. Jiska. No, 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 just stay away from me. The weather is gradually getting dark. This is what he wants, Ben Tennyson said grimly, looking at the darkening weather outside. We must be prepared, Tian Mark thought for a moment and then went to the back compartment. This is truly the most miserable school visit I've ever had. Gwen Tennyson said with a bitter face, looking at the school. Boss, will they really come? Sour Stink said, looking at Jiska beside him. I understand them, aha. Jiska had already returned to his original form, then turned his head and saw Tian Xiaoyan and the others rushing towards them. Jiska. It's utterly tasteless of you to use hostages to lure us here. Tian Xiaoyan pointed at him and said. As long as it attracts you, it's a good move. This school will be your grave. Jiska said with a sinister laugh, his energy greatly increased due to the night conditions. Ha! Previously, his large hand gathered blue energy, and countless surrounding rocks directly rose up to surround them. Now you are helpless, kill them. Jiska pointed at Tian Xiaoyan and the others and said. Ha 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 ha, the freak trio jumped down first, then rushed towards Tian Mark and the others. Come on if you dare. Tian Mark suddenly pulled out an energy gun and first knocked down Bald Overlord who rushed forward. Take this, Chong Fanv, seeing her companion defeated, angrily swung out countless strands of hair, attacking them densely. Kai Luaning. Strep. Gwen Tennyson rushed out first, her magic book floating in front of her, a large blue light appearing in her hand, and then countless energies poured into Chong Fanv's hair, sending her flying backward. Ah! Chong Fanv groaned in pain, her hair smoking. Don't think we're just dead weight. Gwen Tennyson said with a smile, her magic book floating in her hand. You're not bad, little sister, so how about this move? Sour Stink suddenly spat corrosive venom behind her. Just then, Ben Tennyson transformed into Diamond Head, timely blocking in front of her. Wow, that hurts. Ben Tennyson jumped up the instant his arm touched the venom. Where's Big Brother? Gwen Tennyson asked doubtfully when she saw Ben Tennyson run over here. Bang! However, before he could answer, they saw red and purple figures constantly intertwining in the air. Tian Xiaoyan, transformed into Ultimate Ice Phantom, grabbed Jiska's hand and slammed him hard to the ground. Blue light gathered in Jiska's hand, allowing him to quickly stabilize his momentum. Ha! Jiska manipulated countless rocks to directly attack Tian Xiaoyan. Tian Xiaoyan's eyes moved, and he instantly transformed into Shenli Tyrannosaurus, directly smashing the rocks with his fists. Then he switched back to Amphibian, electricity flashing in his hands, attacking Jiska. Bang! Jiska surprisingly phased to dodge, and after evading the attack, he asked doubtfully, why did you change so fast? During his time in the Omnitrix, he had observed Tian Xiaoyan and the others. It shouldn't be possible to change so quickly. Even if it were, he should have to manually control the watch. I removed the limiter, and I transform by my will. I can transform into whoever I want. Tian Xiaoyan smiled and switched to Ultimate Swampfire again. Although it surprises me, even if you transform faster, you can't defeat me. I will take your body, ah. Jiska floated up coldly, his aura gushing out, then quickly rushed towards Tian Xiaoyan. You won't be so arrogant in a moment, Jiska. Tian Xiaoyan rushed up at the same time and laughed. On Ben Tennyson's side, he forcefully punched into the ground, raising a crystal beneath Sour Stink, sending him flying into the air. Bang! Tian Mark directly shot him down to the ground with 2 energy blasts. On the other side, Gwen Tennyson used magic to rapidly accelerate her feet. Ah! With a blink, she appeared above Chong Fanv, then flipped and kicked her directly in the head. Chong Fanv flew backward, spitting foam. Sure enough, physical strikes are more satisfying, Gwen Tennyson said with a smile. Ben Tennyson fired countless crystal projectiles, rescuing the trapped students. Among them was the female student who had led them earlier in the day. We are truly grateful to you, the female student said with a smile, her face completely changed. It's okay, you go back first, let us handle it, Gwen Tennyson said, squeezing her hand. The female student nodded and led the other students out of the school. Ben Tennyson forcefully broke a hole in the rock for them to exit. Next, it's time to complete Big Brother's plan, Ben Tennyson said with a smile, looking at a building. You and your cousin are completely misusing this great invention. Only when I control your body can it exert greater power. In a tall building in the distance, Jiska was holding Tian Xiaoyan, who had transformed into 4 arms, and continuously punching him. Tian Xiaoyan was directly beaten back without resisting. Ha 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 ha. Jiska laughed, looking at his panting appearance, then again manipulated nearby objects to smash towards Tian Xiaoyan. Bang! Tian Xiaoyan was directly smashed into the 5th floor, then fell into a sealed room. This guy is really ruthless. Excellent, Tian Xiaoyan said, getting up from the rubble and sighing. Then he discovered Ben Tennyson's figure. Jiska, having focused his attention on Tian Xiaoyan, had not yet noticed him. Your hero careers end here, Jiska said coldly. Who says so? Ice Ghost. The show is just beginning, Ben Tennyson suddenly said with a laugh from behind him. What? Jiska hadn't expected Ben10 to be here too. Then Ben10 was seen pressing his arm directly into the ground. In an instant, countless crystals covered the entire room. Tian Xiaoyan also slowly walked over at this moment. If everything goes as expected, it's all going very smoothly. Jiska looked at the other party's sinister smile and realized he had been tricked. Next, Tian Xiaoyan, without using his thought-based transformation, manually rotated the Ultimatrix on his chest. After selecting the character with sharp angles, he pressed it down, and in an instant, the figure of NRG appeared before him. However, as Tian Xiaoyan pressed down again, the steel arm developed a crystalline texture. His body became more muscular, and the gaps in his protective suit became more warped and three-dimensional. Behind him, two three-dimensional cannons appeared. Ultimate NRG, Tian Xiaoyan roared, looking up at the sky. Jiska looked at him in silence for a moment, then chuckled, Tian Xiaoyan, although you've given me a lot of experience, can this clumsy alien defeat me? Other than sunlight, other energy and physical attacks basically couldn't harm him. Is that so? Tian Xiaoyan mischievously opened his protective suit in front of him, then revealed his red body with a crown of flames on his head. Tian Xiaoyan emerged from the protective suit, and a blast of scorching energy appeared in his hand, striking Jiska directly. Ah! Jiska fell to the ground, his body smoking. This hero of mine, I have a special state. One is impenetrable. The other is incredibly radiant, do you know what I mean? Tian Xiaoyan's body gradually began to glow. And these crystals can increase the radiation of Big Brother's body energy, turning you to ashes. Ice Ghost, Ben10 also explained with a smile from behind the crystals. No. Jiska could only watch helplessly as the entire room, like a sun, radiated directly onto him. Then he completely disappeared. Tian Xiaoyan returned to his original form, standing in the center, checking if Jiska's energy still existed. He's indeed gone, but I'm still a little worried. Even after the dark energy was basically gone, Tian Xiaoyan was still very worried. Big Brother, is the Ice Ghost dealt with? Ben10 also returned to human form and asked. Don't worry, he should be dealt with, and even if he's not, we'll eliminate him again, Tian Xiaoyan gave an uncertain answer, patting his head. Then he led him outside, back to the old RV. Gwen Tennyson also decided that this university was indeed not suitable for her to continue traveling with Tian Xiaoyan and the others. On this day, Tian Mark drove the old RV, leading Tian Xiaoyan and the others to a humid alligator lake. Ha ha ha, let's seize this advantageous terrain first, Tian Mark said with a laugh as he got out of the car. Yeah. But Grandpa, are you sure this is the place? Gwen Tennyson asked, looking around at the gloomy surroundings with surprise. Tomorrow this place will be packed with tourists for the alligator festival, Tian Mark replied, nodding, then slowly walked out to survey the scenery again. Gwen Tennyson also tentatively walked out and ended up stepping into a puddle of muddy water. Oh, Gwen Tennyson grimaced, looking at the mud on her shoes. Tian Xiaoyan also came out at this moment, saw her awkward appearance, and said with a smile, you'll get used to it. You might step in even more tomorrow. Who gets used to something like this? Wait, where's Ben Tennyson? Gwen Tennyson pouted, realizing Ben Tennyson had disappeared. Bang! 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 Suddenly, they heard the sound of parts moving around at the front of the car. They slowly walked over and saw Ben Tennyson holding a screwdriver, messing with the Omnitrix. What are you doing? Gwen Tennyson immediately asked. Ah, Xiao Wen. Big Brother, how did you two get here? Ben Tennyson discovered someone was watching him and quickly hid the watch and screwdriver behind his back. Cough, cough. Tian Xiaoyan unhurriedly coughed a few times. Ben Tennyson immediately grimaced and brought his hand out, letting them see the current situation. I just wanted to see what other heroes this watch could unlock. Maybe I could fix it, Ben Tennyson said with an awkward laugh. Little Ban. The Omnitrix is a very dangerous piece of technology. Doing this might cause an accident. Who knows what could happen? Tian Xiaoyan patiently advised. Big Brother is right. You're making trouble. You can't always have others clean up your messes. Gwen Tennyson said in agreement. Just as Ben Tennyson was about to say something, Tian Mark also walked over and said, that's right, little Ban, I made you promise me you wouldn't mess with the Omnitrix anymore. Seeing that he was outnumbered and couldn't make his own decisions, Ben10 nodded with a bitter expression. All right then, don't stay up late. Go to bed quickly, Mark said with a smile, then turned and walked into the car. Don't cause trouble, little Ban, Xiaoyan said similarly, and then, after they had all left, Ben10 secretly listened. They probably wouldn't come back down. He smirked and said, then I won't use a screwdriver. I can use my hand, right? He then pulled hard. Click. Then, with a commotion, the Omnitrix's faceplate was actually pulled off by him and thrown aside. It was ridiculous. Azimuth's invention was just pulled off like that. It seemed there was some corner cutting. Oh, no, Ben10 said in a panic, looking at the pulled off faceplate. Sizzle. 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 Immediately after, the Omnitrix also emitted sizzling green electric light, directly illuminating the entire lake. What's wrong? Mark's voice came from the car. Ben10 turned his head and saw them about to come down. He quickly grabbed the faceplate and hid it behind him. Nothing at all. I just bumped into something, Ben10 said with an embarrassed smile. Xiaoyan looked at him suspiciously. Really? Ben10 nodded vigorously, trying to appear calm. Finally, under the gaze of the three of them, Mark sighed and warned Ben10 not to stay outside and to go back to the car to sleep quickly. Phew. That was a close call. Ben10 pushed back the hair covering his sweaty forehead and let out a long breath. But just as he thought it was over, the ground where the faceplate had been previously glowed with an eerie green light. And several worm-like creatures crawled out from inside. The next day, Ben10 got out of the car, feeling uneasy as he looked at the faceplate he had accidentally removed. Is there any way to put it back? Oh, I know. Ben10 chewed on a piece of gum, thinking hard, and suddenly thought he might be able to stick it back with gum. With his actions, the cover was reattached to the Omnitrix with chewing gum. Although there are some flaws and it might be discovered, it should still be as good as new, Ben10 said with a smile, holding up the Omnitrix. What? As good as new? Gwen-Tennyson suddenly stood behind him and teased. Ah. I was going to say it was your face, but it's still just as ugly, Ben10, although startled, pretended to be calm and joked. I think you've been sun-dazed by the Florida sun, Gwen-Tennyson said, glaring at him after hearing that, then turned and walked to the other side. Ben-Tennyson also followed, but as the two of them walked past the car and saw the scenery on the other side, they were stunned, their mouths agape. They saw that the originally gloomy and humid alligator lake had transformed into a crowded amusement festival today. Haha, I told you so, didn't I? The alligator festival has officially opened. Mark walked out from behind, laughing. Grandpa, these are yours. Xiaoyan walked out from inside, holding 3 drinks and handing them to them. Cool. So delicious. Ben-Tennyson took a big gulp after taking it, saying with a smile. What's the recipe in here? It's so good. Gwen-Tennyson also said happily. This is the charm of the alligator festival. Thank you, Xiaoyan. Let's go, we can't miss the most classic scene, Mark said with a smile, also taking a few sips, then led them to a crowded area. As they walked in, a pair of large red eyes gazed at them from the lake behind them. And as they walked, 2 adult fishermen nearby suddenly exclaimed, Hey! Larry, quick look at this. I caught a strange worm. It's super creepy. The blue man said in surprise, looking at the bizarre wriggling worm with 4 eyes in front of him. However, Xiaoyan and the others didn't notice this scene and walked straight to the crowded area ahead. After walking in, they saw 3 eggs standing in the center of the mud. You'll definitely love the alligator festival. It's a once-in-a-century event. Mark explained. You mean like when little Ben changes his underwear? Gwen-Tennyson said with a laugh. Hey! Ben-Tennyson immediately glared at her when he heard that. Alright. Xiaoyan patted his head, telling him to be quiet for a moment. Crack. As the eggshells cracked, 3 young alligators crawled out. Wow! The people around them exclaimed. Gwen-Tennyson raised her hand with a smile and said, Wow, they're so cute. Xiaoyan nodded. They were indeed quite cute. But just as the young alligators entered the lake, they suddenly rushed back out. Why are they back? They're alligators. Ben-Tennyson said in surprise, looking at the young alligators' panicked behavior. This is too strange. Something must have scared them, Tian Mark was about to analyze. Tian Xiaoyan immediately yelled loudly, "Get down!" Tian Mark and the others saw it and immediately discovered a large red, four-eyed frog. It was jumping towards them. The surrounding crowd, seeing such a terrifying creature, quickly fled in panic. "Impossible, I recognize him," Ben10 said quickly, looking at the familiar form. Dongwu must have escaped from prison, Tian Xiaoyan understood in an instant. Croak. The large monster frog directly extended its long tongue to attack Ben10 and the others. Seeing this, Tian Xiaoyan created a red protective wall with sky energy in front of them. Bang! Finally blocked it. Tian Xiaoyan was about to say something when a red ray directly hit the exposed area, scattering them. Tian Xiaoyan saw Dongwu, wearing a series of mechanical equipment, approach Ben10 and couldn't help but curse, "Dongwu. You old scoundrel." Ben10 also saw Dongwu appear next to him and immediately recoiled, but at that moment, the Omnitrix faceplate, stuck with chewing gum in his hand, began to fall off. "Dongwu, how did you?" Ben10 didn't notice, gritting his teeth and asking. "Find you. The alien DNA you left behind allowed me to track you like a GPS. Now it's time for revenge." Dongwu said angrily, hunching over like a chimpanzee. Just as he was about to lay hands on Ben10, Tian Xiaoyan directly hit him in the chest with a sky energy ray, sending him flying backward. "Dongwu. Long time no see," Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, red light flickering in his hand. "It's you, you brat. Looks like you've learned new tricks." Dongwu saw Tian Xiaoyan, then charged forward with even more anger, engaging him with the mechanical device in his hand. "I've got even better tricks." Tian Xiaoyan charged forward fearlessly. Bang! Just as Ben10 was watching the battle between Tian Xiaoyan and Dongwu. "Ah!" Gwen Tennyson's scream attracted him. He turned his head and saw that the large frog was fiercely attacking the blue protective shield Gwen Tennyson had constructed with sky energy. Moreover, cracks appeared, as if it was about to break in the next second. "Hold on, I'm coming." Ben10 saw this scene and rotated the Omnitrix, but he also saw the Omnitrix without its faceplate. However, at this moment, he didn't care about that and just slapped it. After a green flash, Tian Mark and the others temporarily escaped the large frog's pursuit and looked at Ben10 in surprise, saying, "Little Ban. You've turned into 4 arms." Gwen Tennyson looked at the bizarre, patchwork state before her, a 4 arms body, but a stinkfly head, a stinkfly tail emerging from the back, and only stinkfly wings growing on the shoulders. 4 arms plus stinkfly, this must be a new alien species. Now I can fly, this is so cool. Ben10 was a bit shocked but immediately turned to joy. Bang! Tian Xiaoyan temporarily removed the mechanical parts from Dongwu's body and temporarily restrained him with a sky energy shield. Seeing Ben10's bizarre patchwork form, he said in surprise, "Ah, that's a bit strange." On the other side, Ben10 tried hard to hit the frog but found that his strength had actually decreased. Bang! The large frog pushed away Ben10's 4 arms, jumped into the air, and smashed down on him. Ah! Was this guy really that heavy before? Ben10 struggled to hold him up with his 4 arms. He used all his strength to shake the large frog off him, then tried to fly up, but found himself too heavy. This is just too lame. This patchwork version. Ben10 stood on the ground with a bitter face, only to be sent flying by the large frog's tongue again. Can't just watch anymore. Tian Xiaoyan rotated his watch and transformed into Fast Flash Star. He put on his mask, quickly activated his rollers, and rushed over. Bang! Dongwu this time used the last bit of energy to break the sky energy shield. That fool brat. Just as he was about to look for Tian Xiaoyan, he found the Omnitrix faceplate lying on the ground. Sizzle. 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 The faceplate emitted green electric light. At this moment, a small alligator passed by him, was suddenly struck, and grew a diamond-like shell. It then quickly fled. Interesting, Dongwu said with a smile, picking up the faceplate. He seemed to see a great step in the execution of his plan. Bang! 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 Tian Xiaoyan quickly circled the large frog and rapidly struck hundreds of punches, making it miserable. Croak. Just as the large frog jumped out, wanting to escape, Tian Shaoyan transformed into Shenli Tyrannosaurus, grabbed its outstretched left leg, and said with a smile, "Where do you think you're going?" Ah! Bang! 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 Tian Shaoyan roared and delivered a Hulk-style slam, burying him deep into the muddy pit. "Big brother, is it over?" Gwen Tennyson walked over and said. "It should be over. Where's little Ban?" Tian Shaoyan turned back into human form, nodded, and then asked. "I'm here," Ben Tennyson said with a bitter face, emerging from a pile of cardboard boxes. At that moment, Tian Mark discovered that Dongwu had disappeared. "What? Then we should go catch him. Why are you looking at me like that?" Ben Tennyson immediately said after hearing this, only to find that Tian Shaoyan and the others were staring at him with serious expressions. "Explain this," Tian Shaoyan said with a smile, pointing to his watch without its faceplate. He, Ben Tennyson knew he couldn't hide it and laughed awkwardly. "This is truly amazing." In a gloomy, humid building, Dongwu raved about the Omnitrix faceplate Ben Tennyson had dropped. At the same time, he climbed onto the oversized Gene speed gun he had built. "It's incredible. The entire DNA set also has super energy, it's beyond my imagination." After speaking, he placed the faceplate into an empty slot and installed it, emitting a dazzling green light. Dongwu saw this scene and showed a perverted smile. Suddenly, he saw a bat sleeping on the roof, brown bat. What a perfect experimental subject. You should thank Ben Tennyson and the great Dr. Dongwu for making you one of the species of the New World. Dongwu inserted his mechanical hand into the device, adjusted the direction, and aimed at the bat. Dazzling green light continuously gathered at the muzzle. The bat also opened its eyes at this moment, but it had already been hit. Ha 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 ha. Accompanying Dongwu's wild laughter, a flame emerged from outside his building. On the other side, Tian Shaoyan and the others, after listening to Ben Tennyson's explanation, understood that the situation had become somewhat serious. Tian Shaoyan transformed into Little Odd Soldier, climbed onto Ben Tennyson's hand, observed the Omnitrix, and after judging, said, "This is terrible. The Omnitrix has lost its gene control faceplate, causing your alien hero genes to randomly merge together to form new species. But who knows what you'll turn into next?" I don't quite understand. Can you explain it simply?" Ben Tennyson asked, puzzled. "If you tap the watch again, you'll turn into a mutant creature," Tian Shaoyan said faintly. Ah! Ben Tennyson finally felt panicked. How did Tian Mark look at him? He also helplessly asked Tian Shaoyan, "Is there no way to fix it?" "I wish I could, but currently there are no construction materials on Earth that can be made into an Omnitrix cover, and most importantly, the only surviving cover was taken by Dongwu," Tian Shaoyan said, shrugging his shoulders after changing back to his human form. "You're great, idiot. Always messing things up." Gwen Tennyson leaned nearby, watching Ben Tennyson speechlessly. "I didn't want to either. Every time I see my older brother transform into so many alien heroes, but I can only transform into 12, it's just too boring." Ben Tennyson finally blurted out his reason for wanting to mess with the Omnitrix. "You did it because of something like that?" Tian Shaoyan asked in surprise. He, Ben Tennyson awkwardly scratched his head, smiling. Tian Shaoyan was a bit speechless. Although his alien hero unlock time was a bit slow compared to his, he still had many. Why couldn't he be patient? "Alright, little Ban. The most important thing now is to get the cover back, otherwise Dongwu might use it to create various mutated monsters," Tian Mark quickly said. "But who knows where he is?" Ben Tennyson waved his hand, asking confusedly. "I know, we should have found him earlier. It requires a little sacrifice." Gwen Tennyson looked at Tian Shaoyan with a mischievous smile. Tian Shaoyan was very familiar with that smile because he often smiled. After some time, Tian Mark and the others arrived at a lake and got a speedboat. "Big brother, are you sure it's really up ahead?" Gwen Tennyson asked Tian Shaoyan, who had transformed into Super Energy Beast. "Awoo." Tian Shaoyan gesticulated, indicating that it was in that direction. "Big brother, you don't seem to dislike transforming into Super Energy Beast that much after all," Ben Tennyson said teasingly from the speedboat. After hearing him, Tian Shaoyan roared a few times at him, and Ben Tennyson waved his hand sheepishly. Just at this moment, everyone on the lake heard a strange scream. "Oh, I hate that sound," Tien Mark frowned, and then a medium-sized, flaming bat appeared in everyone's sight. Ah! Flame Man turned into a bat. Ben Tennyson exclaimed in surprise. Let me deal with him. Tian Xiaoyan, who had switched to Ice Ghost, was about to go up when a crystalline figure directly tackled Tian Xiaoyan. What the heck? Tian Xiaoyan was unable to react to this sudden attack and was sent flying. Xiao Yan. Tian Mark, seeing him sent flying, called out worriedly, but then saw the flaming bat attacking, and quickly maneuvered the speedboat to dodge. Awoo! Tian Xiaoyan stood up from the forest floor, looked at the tall, crystal-clear figure in front of him, and said in surprise, Crystal Bear. The upper body of the bear in front of him was completely covered in crystal, and its eyes revealed a murderous glint. How did this guy tackle me so quickly? And how did he not land on the boat? Tian Xiaoyan recalled everything that just happened, feeling it was a bit unreasonable. Even if he transformed into an alien monster, his speed wouldn't be that fast, right? As a result, when he saw the bear stand up and its lower body was actually the legs of Fast Flash Star, he immediately said speechlessly, "That's enough, I hate mutated monsters." Bang! The bear quickly rushed over, as if to deliver a heavy blow to Tian Xiaoyan. Tian Xiaoyan timely switched to 4 arms, stabilized his body, and firmly caught its attack. Ha! Tian Xiaoyan's 4 hands continuously pounded the bear's body, but only tiny cracks appeared. I guess that would be useless, Tian Xiaoyan said helplessly, looking at the bear's towering eyes. Awoo! Tian Xiaoyan was slapped away, and he stood up from a tree in a disheveled state. It seems I have to use my full power. Tian Xiaoyan was about to continue fighting when he noticed a sudden yellow glow emanating from his chest. Looking at the current situation, and with the crystal bear rushing towards him at high speed using Fast Flash Star's legs, Tian Xiaoyan gritted his teeth and slapped it. Sizzle! 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 2 streams of water directly blocked the bear's vision, sending it flying. Oh yeah, awesome. Finally, a hero who uses water. Tian Xiaoyan's joyful voice came through. With a red mechanical exterior and crimson eyes, the humanoid alien hero had 2 water-spraying nozzles on his hands. Water hazard appeared. It's time to end this, my bear cub, Tian Xiaoyan said, looking at the enraged crystal bear and quickly rushing towards it. Bang! 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 After giving it a combo punch, the bear angrily grabbed Tian Xiaoyan and lifted him into the air. Although Tian Xiaoyan was caught, he smiled strangely, this is my goal. Since you've caught me, the height is finally enough. With that, he extended one hand into the bear's mouth. MMMPH. The bear instantly felt an unprecedented sensation of swelling, its eyes turning crimson. As its body gradually swelled, it then exploded with a bang. Hard on the outside, but fragile on the inside, huh? Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, shaking off the debris on him. Then he switched to Fast Flash Star and quickly rushed towards Tian Mark and the others, who had already run far away to avoid the flaming bat. Ah! Because Tian Xiaoyan left, Ben Tennyson had to face this scene. Although his watch would malfunction, he still pressed it decisively. However, he turned into Diamond Head, first suffering the ravages of the flaming bat, then falling into the lake and being swallowed by an alligator, and even having to break out with crystals and jump onto a tree trunk. Ben Tennyson said with a bitter face, "It can't get any worse, right?" Ah! A scream directly interrupted him. Ben Tennyson looked at the flaming bat rushing towards him, almost collapsing. I really have a big mouth. Just then, a stream of water directly hit the flaming bat, extinguishing it completely, and it fled in a disheveled state. Big brother, you switched heroes again. This guy, I haven't seen him before. Ben Tennyson turned to look at Tian Xiaoyan, who had transformed into Water Hazard, and said somewhat enviously. Look, this is the difference. It's nothing. Tian Xiaoyan smiled, switched to Ice Ghost, grabbed Ben Tennyson's small body, and returned to the speedboat. Xiao Yan. So glad you're okay. Indeed, when you were knocked flying just now, my heart almost jumped out. Tian Mark and Gwen Tennyson said worriedly, and Tian Xiaoyan smiled slightly in response. Grandpa. Follow it, and we'll find Dongwu's lair. Ben Tennyson, still in his transformed state, pointed at the fleeing flaming bat with surging intelligence. No, little Ban, there's no road ahead, Tien Mark agreed, but the tree trunks in front blocked their way. Let me do it. Just as Ben Tennyson was about to use the crystal in his hand to form a sharp part to cut the tree trunk, the Omnitrix on his chest instantly glowed red, changing him back. Let me do it instead. Tien Xiaoyan, who had transformed into Diamond Head at some point, grabbed Ben Tennyson by the back of his collar, put him behind him, and then crystallized his hand into a sharp part. I hope I can fix my watch, Ben Tennyson said with a bitter face, watching Tien Xiaoyan's strenuous efforts. Clang, clang, clang. With Tien Xiaoyan's efforts, they finally found Dongwu's lair. It should be here, be careful. Tien Mark drove the speedboat into the building, but suddenly saw a large frog above. Bang! Tien Xiaoyan quickly switched to Fast Flash Star, getting all of them off the speedboat. The place where they were was then smashed to pieces. Dongwu. Tien Xiaoyan looked at his family, who were unharmed, breathed a sigh of relief, and then turned his angry gaze towards Dongwu above. Ha ha ha, you came to my place without permission, how impolite. Dongwu said, laughing loudly while sitting on a machine. Give me back my watch cover, Ben Tennyson said, standing up. You can't even dream of it, kid. How can such a great genetic mutation experiment tool be returned to you? I will turn all living beings in the world into mutated monsters, proving that history was created by me, Dr. Dongwu. Dongwu laughed arrogantly. You won't succeed. I'll end this battle in an instant, Tien Xiaoyan said coldly, transforming into Ultimate Echo Echo. I know your power, Tien Xiaoyan, but can you defeat tens of millions of mutated monsters? Dongwu saw Tien Xiaoyan's revealed form and was not afraid, but instead mocked him. What? Tien Xiaoyan and Ben Tennyson behind him all widened their eyes. Awoo! 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 Instantly, countless howls continuously echoed around the building. Did we just walk into a trap this time? Gwen Tennyson said with a bitter face, looking at the countless mutated alien creatures crawling out of the building. It's a disaster, Tien Mark gritted his teeth, holding the energy gun he carried with him. In this situation, I can't not transform anymore. Omnitrix, give me a usable fusion hero, please. Ben Tennyson also gritted his teeth and pressed the Omnitrix again. After a green flash, his upper body was Flame Man, and his lower body was the limbs and tail of Fast Flash Star. Flame Star. Forget it, it's still usable, Ben Tennyson said speechlessly, looking at his bizarre form. Let the slaughter begin. Dongwu finally gave the command to slaughter. Instantly, countless mutated monsters rushed towards Tien Xiaoyan and the others. Bang! 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 In an instant, the entire building was brightly lit, and intense sounds of fighting came from within. Tien Xiaoyan continuously changed between ultimate heroes in this situation, increasing the number of alien monsters he eliminated. Ben Tennyson only relied on the speed of Fast Flash Star to continuously burn the alien monsters that he could burn with his flames. Ah! If this continues, it will never end. Gwen Tennyson, drenched in sweat, used sky energy to construct a blue protective shield, and said to the other three panting individuals. Big brother, do you still have a plan? It's not that I'm too reliant on you, it's just that I'm too tired now. Ben Tennyson changed back to human form, breathing heavily. Yes, Tien Xiaoyan nodded after inputting energy into Gwen Tennyson with one hand for a moment. Really? X3. Ben Tennyson and the others immediately looked at Tien Xiaoyan in surprise. Dongwu also seemed to hear Tien Xiaoyan's words and laughed mockingly. Tien Xiaoyan, at this time, you still want to maintain your persona of being able to solve everything. You disappoint me. Forget it, kill them. Dongwu also unenthusiastically commanded the alien mutated monsters to fiercely attack Ben Tennyson and the others. Perhaps I can't solve it, but it definitely can. You know, I never fail. Tien Xiaoyan changed back to human form and sneered at Dongwu. Then he rotated the Ultimatrix, selected a character, and pressed it down. Instantly, a figure appeared with a brass-colored body, a huge mainspring on its head, and a transparent circular red glass on its chest, revealing the gear structure inside. Clock King appeared. Ha ha ha, I thought it was so powerful. It's just a clumsy piece of junk. Dongwu was startled for a moment, but then mocked. Just watch, you. Tien Xiaoyan's small red expression smiled and rotated the mainspring on his head. Bang! At the same time, the alien mutated monsters also broke through the protective shield and were about to attack. Just in the nick of time, Tian Xiaoyan aimed his chest at the sky, and a red energy covered the sky, including the entire building's red protective shield. Then, a shocking scene unfolded before Ben10 and the others. All the alien monsters, as the protective shield gradually shrunk, completely disappeared. Wow! Ben10 watched all this with his mouth open. How is this possible? What did you do? Dongwu simply couldn't believe that his tens of millions of alien monsters had just disappeared like that. You wouldn't understand even if I told you. Tian Xiaoyan said, waving his hand. You annoying, ah. Dongwu was about to say something when Tian Mark hit him with an energy blast, sending him flying. Phew. You shut up. Tian Mark blew the smoke from his gun and said with a smile. Then, they took out the watch cover from the device. Click. Click. A day later, Tian Xiaoyan, transformed into Little Odd Soldier, assembled the watch cover with some parts. Then, in human form, he smiled and said, alright, it should be fine now. Give it a try. Upon hearing this, Ben10 rotated the watch, and indeed, some familiar alien hero images appeared. Awesome. Ben10 cheered, raising his hands. Little Ban, regarding this lesson, I hope you remember it well, Tian Mark said seriously, standing beside him. Alright, I know I was wrong, Ben10 said, pouting. Don't worry, your future heroes will also slowly unlock. You just need to wait patiently, Tian Xiaoyan said, patting his shoulder. Really? But I know you wouldn't lie to me, big brother, hee, Ben10 first asked, but then nodded with an understanding look. You rascal, Tian Xiaoyan smiled and playfully twisted his fist on his head. Hee, Ben10 smiled, feeling it. Alright, we should go too, Tian Mark said, smiling at the scene. Let's go, big brother and idiot, Gwen Tennyson said, hands on her hips. Coming. The people heard and ran forward. After the old RV left, a figure in a black robe looked at the direction the vehicle was heading and smiled, saying, I can't wait for you to see me, Tian Xiaoyan. Then, he instantly disappeared. Tian Xiaoyan, we've arrived at a magnificent waterfall, admiring the splendid scenery. How can you not marvel at the breathtaking beauty of nature's craftsmanship? Tian Mark said with a smile. It's quite beautiful indeed, Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, taking a few photos with his phone. Hey, why don't you go ask Little Ban? Just as Gwen Tennyson was about to speak, she noticed Ben10 once again fiddling with the Omnitrix. Little Ban. Tian Mark's shout caught Ben10, who was tinkering, and then Tian Mark patiently said, please don't put all your attention on that watch, okay? You've forgotten the last lesson. Of course I know, Grandpa, I just want to control it more freely, nothing else, and I seem to have found a way, Ben10 explained with a smile. Stop messing around. Who knows if that thing has thousands of command combinations? Gwen Tennyson said, frowning. So what? Ben10 said defiantly, then fiddled with the Omnitrix again. Forget it, let him be. After a few glances, Tian Xiaoyan also understood what was about to happen and turned his head back to continue watching the waterfall, not caring too much. Click. Click. Then Ben10 noticed the Omnitrix starting to change, with countless alien hero images flashing on the dial. Oh, annoying, I think I broke the little watch again, Ben10 subconsciously said with a bitter face. If only he could turn into a upgrade, that would solve it. Just as he thought that, the Omnitrix automatically transformed him into a upgrade. Hey, I didn't even touch it, does that mean I don't need to touch it at all? Ben10 said in surprise, looking at his palms. But he seemed to understand something else, and then. Little Odd Soldier. Diamond Head. Under Ben10's designation, the Omnitrix automatically switched alien heroes. Oh yeah, I must have cracked some kind of main control device. Ben10 said excitedly, turning his arm into a sharp part. From now on, I can be like my brother. Transform as I please, whoever I want to be. Ben10 continuously switched alien heroes, finally stopping in the form of Super Energy Beast, sticking his head out. Could you please take a picture for us, huh? Another pair of tourists on the boat kindly asked Tian Mark, only to discover Ben10 transformed into Super Energy Beast. Little Ban. Gwen Tennyson was instantly surprised, looking at Ben Tennyson who had suddenly transformed. Being able to crack the restriction device, that's pretty good, Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile. Restriction device what? Ben Tennyson asked, somewhat confused, transforming into Great Iron Jaw. Ah. But that tourist was already shocked before, and now seeing Ben Tennyson transform again, he was so terrified that he fell directly into the water. Don't be afraid, Great Iron Jaw is here to save you. Ben Tennyson immediately jumped into the water when he saw a chance to show off. He quickly swam in front of the tourist, then instantly switched to Stinkfly, bringing him back onto the boat. Hee hee, Ben Tennyson laughed, seeing Gwen Tennyson and Tian Mark's shocked expressions. Bang! Meanwhile, on a familiar spaceship, our old friend Vilgax furiously smashed the metal object in front of him into pieces. Omnitrix. Ultimatrix. Why can't I obtain these two powerful weapons? Why did they fall into the hands of those hateful earthlings? Vilgax said angrily. Just as he was about to continue venting his anger, a figure emerged from the shadows of his warship. That's because you've always lacked someone to help you, Vilgax, a black-robed figure said, shrugging. Clang. Instantly, Vilgax's mechanical minions all pointed their energy guns at the black-robed figure. How did you get in? And who are you? Vilgax's crimson eyes were filled with confusion as he spoke. It was too illogical that someone could just waltz into his warship like that, wasn't it? Don't ask so many questions, you just need to know one thing. I am your friend, not your enemy, the black-robed figure said, maintaining a normal demeanor despite being surrounded. Ha ha. It seems I, Vilgax, have fallen so low as to be disrespected by an unknown nobody now. Vilgax's eyes filled with a fierce glint as he slowly walked over and said harshly. The black-robed figure saw Vilgax raise his right fist, about to strike him, and coldly said, don't you want the Omnitrix anymore? Whoosh. Vilgax's fist instantly stopped in front of the black-robed figure, causing a small gust of hot wind. However, it still didn't blow away his black robe. Vilgax frowned and said, what do you mean by this? The black-robed figure walked past him, slowly saying, the reason you haven't been able to seize the Omnitrix is entirely because the Ultimatrix in Tian Xiaoyan's hand can evolve alien creatures, isn't that right? Once he combines the power of those evolved creatures, you won't be able to withstand it at all. So you must deal with Ben Tennyson alone, you absolutely cannot let the two of them be together. You've said so much, what exactly are you trying to convey? The black-robed figure's words constantly impacted Vilgax's heart. Vilgax also understood that there was some truth to what he said, but he still replied impatiently. I can help you get rid of Tian Xiaoyan, but the condition is that the Ultimatrix is mine, and you are not allowed to interfere with me. The black-robed figure finally revealed his purpose, saying coldly. Vilgax was stunned for a moment after hearing this, then burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha. The black-robed figure, hearing his laughter, said with some displeasure, what are you laughing at? Do you think Vilgax would cooperate with an unknown nobody who is unwilling to reveal their true appearance? It's simply laughable, Vilgax mocked. Oh, so that's how it is, but you won't be surprised after you see it. The black-robed figure was also stunned for a few seconds by these words, then sneered and said. Then, in front of Vilgax, he slowly removed the top part of his black robe, allowing Vilgax to see his face. This face, could it be? Vilgax said in surprise. In that case, you shouldn't have any doubts, right? The black-robed figure waved his hand after putting his robe back on. From another universe. Vilgax said, analyzing after a moment of silence. Exactly. It seems your brain still has some use. I hope we have a pleasant cooperation, the black-robed figure said with a smile, walking up to Vilgax and extending his right hand. I hope you don't disappoint me. Vilgax also understood that he had no reason to refuse now, and extended his hand to grasp his. You just need to obediently follow my plan, and there's no need for internal strife, the black-robed figure mocked coldly. Tisk, if Vilgax hadn't seen that the other party had the ability to help him seize the Omnitrix, he would have beaten him up already. On the other side, on Earth, Ben Tennyson was happily switching alien heroes. Gwen Tennyson seemed a bit annoyed by him and was about to step in to teach him a lesson, but Tian Xiaoyan stopped her. Don't be so sensitive, little Ban. It's rare for him to laugh so heartily, Just let him be a bit free, Tian Xiaoyan said patiently. Gwen Tennyson looked at Ben Tennyson, who had turned into Diamond Head, digging several holes and laughing heartily. She also thought about their experiences in the past few days, which hadn't been very happy. They had hardly had a chance to laugh like this. All right. But I promise, if he really annoys me too much, I might really not be able to resist teaching him a lesson, Gwen Tennyson reluctantly compromised, but still warned. Okay, Tian Xiaoyan nodded. Just then, Ben Tennyson transformed into Fast Flash Star and came before them, saying, "Hey, I'm going to the city next door to buy ice cream. Do you want me to bring some back for you?" "All right, give me chocolate," Gwen Tennyson said with a smile, raising her hand after hearing him. Tian Xiaoyan and Tian Mark each told him their desired flavors. Ben Tennyson nodded with a smile, then activated his roller skates and ran towards the distant city. "It looks pretty good like this, but I always feel like there's a bad premonition," Tian Xiaoyan said with a smile, watching everything, but he always felt a sense of unease in his heart. At the same location, a magnificent warship stood on the Earth's grassland. The black-robed figure looked at the opened hatch, smiled, and turned his head to say, "Are you familiar with your current body?" Crack. "Ah. I feel incredibly good." Vilgax walked out of a mechanical device, enveloped in smoke, his body's armor stripped of excess parts, and his left hand had become incredibly thick with sharp claws. "It seems pretty good. Let's go." In Earth's terms, a surprise attack is the best. The black-robed figure nodded for a moment, then turned to look in the direction of Tian Xiaoyan and the others. Over there, on a cable car surrounded by two small mountains, Gwen Tennyson was admiring the beautiful scenery. Ben Tennyson suddenly transformed into Diamond Head, making a strange, gurgle, sound. Gwen Tennyson couldn't help but frown and look at him. "What are you doing?" Faced with the question, Ben Tennyson shrugged and said, "I just wanted to see which hero is best at spitting." After saying that, he transformed into Flame Man. Bang! A small flame was spit into the river, causing a small puff of smoke. "Oh yeah, Flame Man wins big!" Ben Tennyson shouted excitedly. Just then, a pair of tourists in the cable car in front of them looked at the Flame Man in a panic. "We don't know him," Gwen Tennyson said with a helpless expression. "We know him." Suddenly, a cold shout came from above the cable car, and then a large green hand directly broke through the roof and grabbed Ben Tennyson. Aha! Ben Tennyson looked at the large hand that grabbed him in surprise, and when he clearly saw the attacker's appearance, he was completely astonished. "Vilgax, what happened to your left hand?" Ben Tennyson looked at the left hand that was gripping him. It had become incredibly thick and had sharp claws. "Of course, it's a measure to counter your ability to remove the restriction device," the black-robed figure said coldly, standing to the side. "Vilgax, I didn't expect you to team up with someone else for revenge," Tian Mark said in surprise from below. "Shut up. Once I'm done with this kid, I'll deal with you," Vilgax roared at Tian Mark, then noticed Ben Tennyson disappear, but his gaze seemed to have anticipated it. Bang! Vilgax extended small tentacles from his arm and directly grabbed Ben Tennyson, who had transformed into Little Odd Soldier. "Hey! Ah! Ben Tennyson was about to say something when he was electrocuted, smoke rising from his body. "Grandpa! Xiao Wen! Hold on tight." Although Tian Xiaoyan didn't understand why Vilgax would attack again after Kevin was no longer a hybrid, or who that black-robed figure was. But he couldn't just watch. Tian Xiaoyan rotated the Ultimatrix, transformed into Upgrade, covered the cable car, and directly extended two mechanical tentacles to grab Vilgax and the black-robed figure, throwing them aside. Aha! In the process of being thrown, Vilgax grew a pair of wings on his back, which was simply terrifying. Ha! Tian Xiaoyan, you're still able to make quick judgments like before, the black-robed figure said coldly in the air. Tian Xiaoyan was somewhat confused by his words. But the next scene shocked him a bit. He saw the black-robed figure actually pull out the arm with the Ultimatrix from his sleeve, then rotated it and transformed into the future version of Ice Ghost. "Abeto! It's you!" Tian Xiaoyan saw the red and white Ice Ghost in the familiar tone of the other party, and completely understood that Abeto must have traveled through time. His current form must be fully evolved, having traveled through time. Ha! Abeto shot a freezing ray from his mouth, directly attacking in Tian Xiaoyan's direction. "Get out of the way!" Tian Xiaoyan, being attached to the cable car, couldn't respond immediately. Ben-10 instantly transformed into Flame Man to counterattack. Bang! Just then, a large hand appeared next to the cable car and directly tore open the door. Vilgax's large face with crimson eyes appeared, grinning menacingly, "Don't forget about me." He then fixed his gaze on Ben-10, who was still clashing with Abedo. Tien Mark was instantly furious at himself for not carrying his equipment at all times. Karo Daro Saloran, Gwen Tennyson chanted a magic spell, and the blue sky energy in her hand directly struck Vilgax. Vilgax was instantly overcome with drowsiness. Ah! But who knew, the next second he violently struck his own body, instantly waking himself up. Then he directly boarded the cable car. Tian Xiaoyan's eyes widened instantly. This weight was too heavy, wasn't it? Don't forget, you too. Just as Vilgax was about to attack Gwen Tennyson and the others, he suddenly grinned and placed his right hand on the electronic skin covering the cable car. Tian Xiaoyan was electrocuted back to his original form before he could switch alien heroes. Now, Abedo saw this, immediately stopped clashing with Ben-10, turned, flew towards Tian Xiaoyan, pulled out a device, and directly grabbed him. What the hell is this? Tian Xiaoyan, while being held in the air, found that he couldn't transform. Don't struggle, this is a special device specifically for dealing with Gavin Star's transformations, Abedo said coldly. Tian Xiaoyan gritted his teeth, then heard a gasp from below. It turned out that Vilgax had grabbed Ben-10, who had transformed into Stinkfly, and thrown him into the nearby forest. Gwen Tennyson's shouting at him, Tian Xiaoyan also transformed into Ice Ghost and directly broke free from the device. I don't know why you traveled back in time, but you messed with the wrong person, Tian Xiaoyan said coldly, looking at Abedo in the air. He. Not necessarily. In fact, I can give you a chance. As long as you obediently hand over the Ultimatrix, I can leave you with a full corpse, Abedo said, completely unafraid. Bang! Then, they began to collide, causing waves of ripples. On the other side, Ben-10, who had transformed into 4 arms and was escaping Vilgax's attack in the forest, suddenly felt miserable. Annoying. Why can I transform as I please, but still can't beat Vilgax? Bang! Suddenly, Vilgax's figure leapt directly from the air and appeared before him, coldly saying, Ben-10. Give me the Omnitrix. Ben-10, after hearing this, switched to Fast Flash Star, gritted his teeth, and said, then you'll have to turn me into a corpse first, you stinky squid. After saying that, he put on his mask and quickly rushed towards him. That's a great idea. Vilgax, after hearing this, pointed his right hand at him and sprayed countless organic bombs from an open crack. Bang! 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 Ben-10 was directly flipped over by the bombs during his advance. I have to find a way, otherwise I'm really going to be taken out, Ben-10 said, gritting his teeth, switching to Wildvine in the air and grabbing a nearby tree. Bang! Tian Xiaoyan, who was fighting Abedo, transformed into Ultimate Swampfire and threw countless blue bombs. Abedo, seeing this, transformed into a grasshopper and dodged the attacks with several leaps, then switched to Gravitack in the air. Using gravity control in his hand, he directly lifted Tian Xiaoyan into the air and threw him onto a nearby rock. Let's see how this move works. Tian Xiaoyan emerged from the rock, then his red sky energy in his hand directly attacked Abedo. Abedo watched the incoming red energy, advancing unhurriedly, and surprisingly, was completely unharmed. Why? Tian Xiaoyan was a bit confused seeing this. Suddenly, he noticed a small angular device on Abedo's chest. This is an isolation device that can block your anodite sky energy, which means you can't use your sky energy power against me now. Abedo explained with a cold sneer. Tian Xiaoyan immediately cursed, is that how you play? Then, he saw Abedo switch to ultimate Gravitack, floating in the air and manipulating gravity to toss Tian Xiaoyan around randomly. Bang! 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 Tian Xiaoyan roared amidst the continuous attacks, switched to ultimate power Tyrannosaurus, gritted his teeth, and looked at Abedo floating in the air. Round 2. After saying that, he charged forward. You have too few heroes now, you're no match for me. Abedo's scarlet eyes revealed a look of disdain. Meanwhile, Back in the old RV, Tien Mark finally detected Ben Tennyson's whereabouts using the Omnitrix's signal. Grandpa, up ahead. Gwen Tennyson suddenly exclaimed, seeing Ben Tennyson flying on the main road, being brutally hammered by Vilgax. Ah! Tien Mark roared and accelerated forward. It's over, Ben Tennyson. Vilgax coldly raised his thick left hand, looking at Ben Tennyson, who was painfully transforming back into human form. I won't let you hurt my grandson. Tien Mark's angry roar came, and Vilgax turned his head to see countless energy guns appearing on the old RV's roof, which then directly blasted him away under Vilgax's gaze. Grandpa. Ben Tennyson looked at the appearance of the old RV with surprise. Tien Mark, wearing a plumber's uniform, and Gwen Tennyson simultaneously got out of the car and came before Ben Tennyson. Seeing that he was fine, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. Are you here specifically to die, Tien? Vilgax walked over from a distance, sneering. I'm here to finish this, Vilgax. Tien Mark stood up, took out his pistol, looked at Vilgax with cold eyes, and then charged forward. Vilgax swung his left hand, Tien Mark ducked to avoid it, then his left hand's energy gun pressed close to Vilgax's chest, directly attacking and making Vilgax retreat slightly. Ah! Vilgax roared, shooting 2 red lasers from his eyes at Tien Mark. Ah! The protective suit on Tien Mark's face blocked some of the attack, but a look of pain still appeared on his face, yet he still resolutely charged forward. Bang! 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 Ben Tennyson looked at Tien Mark fiercely fighting Vilgax, momentarily unsure what to do. What should I do? Vilgax has become so strong, I'm no match for him. Big brother, where are you? Calm down, dummy. Do you always want your big brother to solve problems for you? We always have to figure things out ourselves, Gwen Tennyson quickly said, looking at Ben Tennyson's appearance. But, Ben Tennyson's face still showed hesitation, but when he saw Tien Mark being lifted into the sky by Vilgax with one hand, he suddenly widened his eyes. And he remembered Tien Xiaoyan's words. Little Ban. You must remember that the Omnitrix doesn't just give you alien hero superpowers, it gives you the courage to do things you dare not do. You must learn to have a competitive spirit so that you can turn any danger into good fortune, Tien Xiaoyan said with a warm smile, patting his shoulder. Ben Tennyson closed his eyes and, when he opened them again, his gaze had completely changed. Vilgax. Ben Tennyson loudly shouted at Vilgax, who was about to harm Tien Mark. The moment Vilgax turned his head, Ben Tennyson transformed into Diamond Head and directly blasted him away with one strike. What's going on? How did this kid become so powerful? Vilgax stopped his retreat with his claws, looking at Ben Tennyson in front of him with confusion. Cough cough cough, little Ban. Tien Mark squatted down, looking at Ben Tennyson standing in front of him, saying with shock. Grandpa, leave it to me now. You guys go do what you can do. Ben Tennyson turned to respond, then charged at Vilgax again. Tien Mark understood and took Gwen Tennyson to the old RV. Bang! 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 The ensuing battle was evenly matched. Ben Tennyson continuously switched between 12 alien heroes, striking at Vilgax's weaknesses, attacking without fear. Ah! Ben Tennyson, transformed into 4 arms, had a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He charged up 2 punches and sent Vilgax flying into a nearby fence, then tiredly squatted down, gasping for breath. Cough cough. Ben Tennyson, although I don't know how you gained the determination to defeat me, you cannot change your fate of failure. Although Vilgax was also very tired and had some injuries on his body, he still looked at Ben Tennyson in front of him with high spirits. You know what? I don't need to defeat you. I'm just stalling for them, hee, Ben Tennyson said mockingly to Vilgax after hearing him. What? Vilgax looked on in surprise after hearing this, then he saw Tien Mark getting out of the car, holding an void spiritual realm projector. Disappear. Tien Mark aimed at Vilgax and pressed it. A yellow vortex suction gate appeared around Vilgax. No. It can't end like this. Vilgax roared unwillingly. Suddenly, his left hand released a red laser aimed at Tien Mark and the others. Ben Tennyson, seeing this, transformed into Diamond Head, came in front of them, blocked the laser, and then coldly said, Vilgax, do you know why you failed? It's because I have a good cousin. Bang. Then, a deflected ray directly blasted Vilgax into it. Phew, it's finally over, Ben10 said, transforming back into human form, sweating profusely and panting. You're amazing, little Ben. I'm proud of you, Tien Mark said with a smile. Gwen Tennyson also smiled and helped Ben Tennyson up. Thanks, but this should be credited to Big Brother. Speaking of which, where's Big Brother? Ben Tennyson rubbed his head, grinning foolishly. But just as they were searching for Tien Xiaoyan's figure, bang. A loud bang made them look behind them, only to see Abeto, transformed into a upgrade, grabbing Tien Xiaoyan, who had devolved back into a normal Shenli Tyrannosaurus. Next time, let's not end with Shenli Tyrannosaurus, alright. Tien Xiaoyan said with a bitter face, his hands powerless. I told you, you can't defeat me, Abeto said mockingly, flapping his wings. The next second, a spatial rift appeared in front of him, and he threw Tien Xiaoyan into it, then flew in himself. Big Brother. Ben Tennyson shouted loudly. Tien Xiaoyan, thrown into Abeto's territory, was immediately restrained upon arrival. This way, it will be much easier, Abeto said with a smile, transforming back into the 16-year-old Ben Tennyson's appearance. Can't you use a different face? It's so distracting, Tien Xiaoyan said speechlessly, looking at the face that was identical to his younger brother's. Do you think I only like staying in this stinking human shell on Earth? Abeto glared, coming close to Tien Xiaoyan, and roared loudly. He then used a mechanical device to bind Tien Xiaoyan to a triangular plate device. The Ultimatrix and Sky Energy were also restrained, ensuring Tien Xiaoyan could no longer cause trouble. Abeto came to the computer and began operating it, while also eating spicy fries. The Ultimatrix is indeed bound to your genes, but for me, it's almost effortless. Hey, why are you still eating? Tien Xiaoyan said immediately, looking at Abeto eating spicy fries. This is just a habit I accidentally developed because I'm trapped in this stinking shell. Stop talking so much, shut up. I'll soon be able to restore my true form, Abeto said, controlling the mechanical device to slowly approach Tien Xiaoyan's restrained right arm. Dr. Mao Dun. Why aren't you here yet? Tien Xiaoyan immediately thought of Dr. Mao Dun. On the other side, in the original timeline, Ben Tennyson and the others also received a reminder from Dr. Mao Dun. Dr. Mao Dun said with a smile, it seems I'm not too late. We still have time. If you had come earlier, my big brother wouldn't have been captured, and why do I always feel like I've seen you somewhere? Ben Tennyson pouted, saying in surprise. Ah, there's a reason for that, but I can't tell you, Dr. Mao Dun teased Ben Tennyson. Please, quickly take us to Xiao Yan. Tien Mark also noticed the seriousness of the matter and pleaded. Of course, it would be an honor. Dr. Mao Dun opened his pocket watch, revealing a blue vortex gate, and then they all walked in. Tien Xiaoyan was currently enduring the painful sensation of the Ultimatrix being stripped away, which Abeto watched with excitement. Suddenly, a flame burst forth. Abeto instantly noticed and transformed into Diamond Head, blocking the flames. It's you guys. Abeto was somewhat surprised to see Ben Tennyson, who had transformed into Flame Man, and Tien Mark and the others behind him. But when he saw Dr. Mao Dun, he understood everything. Time traveler, you shouldn't interfere. Abeto looked at Dr. Mao Dun with cold eyes. Yes, perhaps as you say. But I cannot abandon my friend, Tien Xiaoyan, Dr. Mao Dun said with a confident smile. Quickly give my big brother back, Why does this face look so familiar? Gwen Tennyson's hands glowed with blue sky energy. Just as she was about to scold him, she saw Abeto transform back into human form. What's going on? Although there were some changes, Tien Mark still recognized it at a glance. It was his grandson Ben Tennyson's face. It's normal for you to be surprised seeing me like this, but all of this is because of you. Abeto initially had little reaction, but when his gaze fell upon Ben Tennyson, he roared and pointed at him. Shrimp. Ben Tennyson looked confusedly at this younger version of himself, whose face somewhat resembled his own. Abeto's original form is a Gavin Star, Asmith's former assistant. Because he also wanted to use the Omnitrix, he transformed into Ben Tennyson's appearance, but he couldn't change back, Dr. Mao Dun explained from the side. Wait, Asmith is connected to him. Tien Mark said in surprise. Who is Asmith, Grandpa? Gwen Tennyson was a bit surprised that Tien Mark seemed familiar with the name. Well, Tien Mark awkwardly turned his head aside and chuckled. That's right, it's because I had to use the Omnitrix, and my appearance changed into this stinking Earth shell, which is why I need the Ultimatrix's alien DNA to restore my true form. But I've changed my mind now, Abeto said fiercely, then rotated the Ultimatrix and transformed into the grotesque Ultimate Power Tyrannosaurus. The Omnitrix of this timeline has Gavin Star DNA. Give it to me. Abeto roared and charged at Ben Tennyson. Bang! Ben Tennyson was caught off guard and sent flying. Then, he switched to Stinkfly and stabilized himself in the air. Although I don't know what exactly happened, you're a bad guy, that much is certain. Then he spat out countless sticky fluids, attacking Abeto. Roar! Abeto blocked the sticky fluid attack with his hands and roared, transforming his arms into 4 turrets, directly launching countless missiles in the direction of Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson. Bang! 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 Gwen Tennyson used sky energy to create a shield around Tien Mark and the others, temporarily avoiding the attack. As for Ben Tennyson, he narrowly dodged the turret attacks, only to be hit by an ice ray. He looked down and saw Abeto, who had transformed into an ice ghost, had struck him. Ultimate Spider Monkey, Abeto transformed into a large black gorilla with 6 arms and spat out a stream of web to bind Ben Tennyson. This is mine, Abeto said coldly, grabbing the Omnitrix. Ben Tennyson felt a huge force continuously erupting in his arm, gritting his teeth and crying out in pain. Little Ban, Tien Mark and the others, as well as Tien Xiaoyan, watched in panic. Sizzle. 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 At this moment, the Omnitrix emitted green sparks, and then, under Abeto's shocked gaze, it directly unleashed green energy, sending him flying. Did the strong impact activate the self-preservation mode? Abeto got up and said coldly. Just then, he heard, Rosalind. Wangshu Puno, he turned his head and saw that the restraints on Tien Xiaoyan had been removed by Gwen Tennyson's magic. Now it's time to pay the price, Abeto, Tien Xiaoyan said coldly, rotating the Ultimatrix. Even if you can move, so what? You can't defeat me, Abeto looked at Tien Xiaoyan with disdain. That's not necessarily true, Tien Xiaoyan said with a sneer. He had just received the cheat from Dr. Maodun. Tien Xiaoyan was seen rotating the Ultimatrix, choosing a character, then slamming it down. Instantly, a bright red light appeared. A gigantic robot, even taller than Shenli Tyrannosaurus. Its body was red and white, with a large cylindrical arm filled with red energy and dark red bubbles that continuously flowed within its body. Its Ultimatrix symbol was on its chest. Original Energy King Kong appears. What? Abeto looked at Tien Xiaoyan, who had transformed into Original Energy King Kong, in surprise. Bang! Tien Xiaoyan directly flew into the air, rapidly charged at Abeto, and then punched him, Himina. The clash of absolute power directly sent Abeto crashing into the rocks behind him, creating a deep indentation. Wow, this hero is so strong. Gwen Tennyson looked at the Original Energy King Kong in front of her in surprise. So cool. Why can't I unlock such a cool hero? Ben Tennyson gasped for breath, then looked at Tien Xiaoyan standing next to him, his eyes sparkling. There's a chance, Tien Xiaoyan said with a smile, lowering his head, though his expression couldn't be seen. Roar roar. Abeto transformed into Ultimate Power Tyrannosaurus and charged forward again, unwilling to give up. Tien Xiaoyan ran towards him. The moment Abeto attacked, he grabbed his arm, then continuously spun him outwards and threw him into the sky. Then he flew up, Atomic's proto-energy burst. Tien Xiaoyan gathered red nuclear energy in his hand and struck Abeto's chest with one blow. Boom! Abeto fell to the ground at an incredibly fast speed, creating a huge deep pit. Abeto transformed back into his original form, crying out in pain, then fainted. I still feel like it's distracting, Tien Xiaoyan landed on the ground, looking at Abeto's face, and complained again. After a while, Dr. Maodun sent Abeto back to his own timeline and stated the stability of the timeline, so he had to take some measures. So, we'll forget too? Gwen Tennyson asked tentatively. Dr. Maodun nodded. Ben Tennyson smiled nonchalantly and said, no problem. Anyway, I've already unlocked the ability to transform anytime. What's going on? When Ben Tennyson tried to transform, he found he couldn't transform according to his will anymore. Dr. Mao Dun then explained, Little Ban. I regret to inform you that when Abeto held your watch just now, he also reset your restriction device. Now you'll have to make some more trouble to unlock it. Ah. Don't do that. Ben Tennyson said with a bitter face. Big brother, can you help me unlock it? Ben Tennyson suddenly looked at Tian Xiaoyan with anticipation. Tian Xiaoyan thought for a moment, then lowered his head and said, no. Ben Tennyson immediately looked puzzled, asking why. Tian Xiaoyan said nothing, just smiled it off. Big brother, can't you just grant my wish? We're going to lose our memories soon. Little Ban, I think it's better if you just transform properly. Really not. No. Oh, annoying. Ha 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 x4. Under Ben Tennyson's complaints, Tian Xiaoyan and the others returned to their own timeline and resumed their journey. That night, Tian Xiaoyan and the others were loaded with bags, walking out of a shopping mall. 500 stores, 72 restaurants, 48 cinemas, and an indoor roller rink. Gwen Tennyson exclaimed excitedly, holding a brown brochure. We can spend the entire summer here. This place has everything. Ben Tennyson half knelt on the ground, cheering with his hands raised. But then, the next second. Ding! 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 The mall's alarm blared. Two agile figures were leaping outside, followed by a group of security guards chasing them. And a constant crime scene. Tian Xiaoyan muttered, holding two bags. Looks like these mercenaries need some backup. Good thing a great hero is here. Ben Tennyson smiled, turning his watch. Little Ban. Be careful. Although Tian Mark knew Ben Tennyson no longer needed his worry, he still reminded him. Don't worry, Grandpa. Ben Tennyson turned his watch and transformed into Super Energy Beast. Tian Xiaoyan spread his hands, indicating he wouldn't join this time. Roar. Ben Tennyson nodded, then charged forward. The two figures agilely leapt through the night, then jumped into a building right before the security guard's eyes. Roar. Suddenly, Ben Tennyson leapt over their heads, circled a street lamp, and followed them into the building. Just as the two figures were about to leave, they heard a commotion and turned around. Ben Tennyson pounced directly, knocking them down along with the jewels. Bang! They were sent flying, revealing their faces. Ben Tennyson was surprised to see they were an elderly couple. But before Ben Tennyson could react, the elderly couple struck a kung fu pose and began to beat Ben Tennyson together. Although Ben Tennyson had the advantage of size, he couldn't withstand their agile teamwork and was sent flying, gaining no advantage. Ow! Ben Tennyson stood up unwillingly, just about to fight again. Police cars appeared nearby. Ben Tennyson looked at the officers getting out, surprised, then turned his head to see that the elderly couple had vanished. They released a crazy monster to escape pursuit, chase them quickly. One of the officers, seeing Ben Tennyson's appearance, quickly spoke into his walkie-talkie. Ow! Ben Tennyson roared, leaping over their heads, and began to flee. The police behind him pursued relentlessly. Just as Ben Tennyson reached the road, Tian Mark drove the old RV over in time. Hurry! Tian Xiaoyan opened the car door. Ben Tennyson, now back in human form, jumped directly into the car. Hold on tight. Tian Mark stomped on the gas, moving forward quickly. The police officers behind them saw this and said again, he's escaped in that RV. Quickly surround them. Then, after a few turns, the old RV was still surrounded. A police officer, holding a pistol, opened the car door to get in, but found no super energy beast, only Tian Xiaoyan and the others smiling relaxed. Is there something wrong, officer? Tian Xiaoyan smiled and waved. Yeah, everything's safe here. Ben Tennyson also waved his Omnitrix watch, which had already turned red. Target not found. The officer looked around the car and found no hidden items, so he could only helplessly give up on the walkie-talkie. The next morning, due to mistaking Tian Mark's old RV for the robbers' getaway vehicle, the mall agreed to compensate for the damages. Tian Mark and Tian Xiaoyan went to wait for repair parts, while Ben Tennyson and Gwen Tennyson strolled through the mall, each holding a drink. You're amazing, great hero. Not only did you let the robbers get away, but you also made security think you were their accomplice, resulting in the old RV having a thrilling chase. Gwen Tennyson raised an eyebrow and said. I don't understand what you're babbling about. The mall is willing to compensate us for our losses. Grandpa and Big Brother are waiting for repair parts, and we can shop a bit more. You should be thanking me. Ben Tennyson retorted, looking unconcerned. Oh, right, you're amazing, super energy beast. Gwen Tennyson had an idea and slammed Ben Tennyson's back, making his drink spill all over his face. Hey! Ben Tennyson immediately glared at her. Gwen Tennyson waved her hand, and suddenly she saw a sign that interested her. Ooh! Amazing Shabu Lingnuo, last day of the hypnosis show, cool. Let's go watch. Gwen Tennyson smiled and turned her head to say. Haha, we almost missed it, didn't we? Ben Tennyson teased, then followed her. In the audience of a stage, only a few people were watching. Come one, come all, folks, for Shabu Lingnuo's spectacular hypnosis show. A call rang out from the center of the stage. Then, accompanied by the appearance of purple smoke, a slightly short middle-aged man in a red uniform stumbled out. Cough cough, Shabu Lingnuo will lead you on an amazing magical journey, amazing, cough cough. Shabu Lingnuo was choked by the smoke once, but still put on a master's demeanor. First, I need some volunteers to come on stage and assist me, Shabu Lingnuo continued. Enough, only empty-headed people get hypnotized. Ben Tennyson said, exasperated. But the next second, Gwen Tennyson, holding a camcorder, mischievously raised his hand. Hey, here's a volunteer. Gwen Tennyson said with a smile. What are you doing? I'm not going up there. Ben Tennyson's eyes widened as he pulled his hand away, looking at her. Are you afraid of others finding out you're empty-headed? Gwen Tennyson teased. Ben Tennyson was immediately speechless from the retort, then reluctantly walked up. Subsequently, two elderly people and Ben Tennyson all stood up on stage. All right, now relax your whole body, and focus your attention on the pocket watch in my hand. You will be very tired. And want to fall asleep. Shabu Lingnuo began his performance, taking out a normal pocket watch and swinging it in front of them. But no matter how he swung the pocket watch, Ben Tennyson and the two elderly people looked at him with confused expressions. Tisk! Shabu Lingnuo cursed under his breath, then pulled out another chainless pocket watch from his pocket and pressed a button. The next moment, a yellow wave directly covered the area where Ben Tennyson and the others were. Ben Tennyson and the others' pupils immediately constricted, then their eyes, heavy with fatigue, closed. Wow! Even those in the audience below who had been skeptical of Shabu Lingnuo exclaimed in surprise at this moment. Wow, is it real or fake? But I don't think I should miss this opportunity. Gwen Tennyson was also surprised that Ben Tennyson actually closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next second, she mischievously picked up the camcorder and started filming. Alright, the next second you open your eyes, you will become newborn babies. Shabu Lingnuo now looked at ease, hands behind his back, saying with a smile. Wah 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 wah. Ben Tennyson and the two elderly people opened their eyes, and immediately put on crying expressions, even biting and chewing on their fingers. Ha 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 ha. The people below laughed even harder at this scene. Shabu Lingnuo immediately continued to give commands, saying, next, you will become farm chickens. Cluck 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 cluck. Ben Tennyson and the others still followed, starting to act the part. Just then, Tian Xiaoyan and the others returned. Tian Mark, holding a bag of things, said confusedly, hey, why is little Ban acting like a chicken? And he looks a bit silly, his eyes are so speechless. Tian Xiaoyan, holding a can of cola, also looked at Ben Tennyson's eyes on stage with confusion. He's always silly, isn't he, big brother? And I think this is the best day ever. Gwen Tennyson didn't care about anything and continued to laugh and record. You are a ballerina. You are a fierce grizzly bear. Shabu Lingnuo then commanded the other two elderly people, and they also followed his commands. But when it was Ben Tennyson's turn, Shabu Lingnuo thought for a moment, then said, and you, little friend, you are an alien. This sentence made the cola in Tian Xiaoyan's mouth spray out. As expected, Ben Tennyson, with a blank look in his eyes, began to manipulate the Omnitrix. Oh my god. This is no longer a performance. We need to stop him quickly. Tian Xiaoyan and the other two immediately said in surprise. Gwen Tennyson, perhaps because she was the one who told Ben Tennyson to go up, rushed forward and directly tackled Ben Tennyson, who was about to activate the Omnitrix. As they rolled behind the curtain, a green light flashed. Shabu Lingnuo angrily pulled back the curtain and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Sorry, my cousin might need to go to the little alien restroom, Gwen Tennyson said with an awkward smile, holding something in her hand. Shabu Lingnuo felt this girl was a bit strange, and he didn't make her put the curtain back. Phew. Gwen Tennyson took a deep breath, then looked at the silly little odd soldier in her hand. "Oh, take me to your leader, I want to rule you." Ben Tennyson said blankly. Haha. Gwen Tennyson looked at his appearance, as if she had a good idea, and walked towards Tian Xiaoyan and the others with a mischievous smile. In the evening, Ben Tennyson's eyes widened as he looked at his silly, dazed appearance in the camera, and his embarrassing moments while hypnotized. Is this really me? Ben Tennyson said in disbelief. Although it's a bit hard to believe, it really is you. Oh, by the way, this is my favorite part. Gwen Tennyson explained with a smile, then cut to the little odd soldier part for Ben Tennyson to see. Master, are you alright? Master. Hearing that silly tone, Ben Tennyson just wanted to find a hole to crawl into. It's a shame that after the Omnitrix time ended, you changed back. Otherwise, I still wanted you to help me with other things. Gwen Tennyson spread her hands helplessly. Hey, you've gone too far. And big brother, why didn't you help me? Ben Tennyson immediately glared at her in exasperation, then looked at Tian Xiaoyan, who was lying nearby. I think that was pretty good, and you were in a normal state too, Tian Xiaoyan explained awkwardly. He couldn't very well say he also wanted to watch the show, could he? You guys are just. I'm going to sleep. Ben Tennyson was about to scold them, but his eyes were tired, and he turned and walked into his bed. Did he used to go to bed so early? Gwen Tennyson looked at Tian Xiaoyan in confusion. That is a bit strange, Tian Xiaoyan said, stroking his chin. Alright, maybe he really is tired from playing and wants to sleep. You two should also clean up and go to bed soon. Tian Mark, however, didn't think anything was wrong, and said with a smile, trying to smooth things over. After Tian Xiaoyan and Gwen Tennyson exchanged glances, they also nodded, planning to go to bed soon. Sometime late, a yellow wave came from the mall's clock. Ben Tennyson suddenly opened his eyes and got out of bed. Little Ban. What are you doing? Tian Xiaoyan opened his eyes tiredly, looking at the dazed Ben Tennyson. Dummy. It's already very late, Gwen Tennyson said, opening her eyes. But Ben Tennyson ignored them completely, turning his watch and transforming into upgrade. Hey, wait. Tian Xiaoyan immediately realized something was wrong and rushed forward, but the next second, Ben Tennyson's body liquefied and flew out of the car door. Then Tian Mark also woke up. They opened the car door and saw Ben Tennyson standing on the mall's rooftop. Just as he was about to do something, a spotlight suddenly shone on him. A helicopter hovered in the sky, saying in a warning tone, "We are the mall's security." Little Ban. Why did you turn into upgrade? Gwen Tennyson said in surprise, looking at Ben Tennyson surrounded by 3 helicopters on the rooftop. He must be sleepwalking, perhaps he doesn't even know what he's doing. Tian Mark analyzed. Is that really the case? Tian Xiaoyan, however, detected something amiss. Subsequently, countless police cars also appeared behind them. Bang! 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 Ben Tennyson kept dodging the plane's bullets on the roof, punching a helicopter back, and then turning around to pounce on another helicopter that was firing bullets. The 2 police officers piloting the helicopter watched Ben Tennyson pounce on them in horror. Then, at the moment of contact, Ben Tennyson directly covered the entire helicopter, turning it into a modified version of green electronic code. Oh no! First, he threw the 2 police officers down. Seeing this, Tian Xiaoyan rotated his watch to become an ice ghost and flew up to catch them. After placing them on a tree, he looked at Ben Tennyson, who was still hovering in the sky, and flew up to him, saying, "Little Ban. Do you really know what you are doing? If you are still awake, talk to me." Tian Xiaoyan's earnest persuasion only resulted in a barrage of powerful bullets. Tian Xiaoyan kept dodging in the sky, there's no other way. Tian Xiaoyan helplessly patted the watch on his chest, switching to Ultimate Ice Phantom. Tian Xiaoyan exhaled a blast of ice flames, directly hitting Ben Tennyson, who was still hovering in the air. Bang! The moment Ben Tennyson was hit, he also detached from the helicopter, causing him to fall directly to the ground. Unfortunately, the direction he fell almost hit a police car. Alas, Lin Yinmu Lewis, at this moment, Gwen Tennyson chanted a magic spell and directly wrapped the helicopter, throwing it aside. Phew. Tian Xiaoyan was about to let out a sigh of relief when Ben Tennyson directly tackled him. Bang! 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 What do you want, kid? Tian Xiaoyan looked at Ben Tennyson, who was attacking him wildly, completely puzzled. Watch me wake you up. Tian Xiaoyan grabbed Ben Tennyson, threw him from the roof to the side, and then switched to water hazard. Bang! 2 jets of water directly drenched Ben Tennyson, who had already gotten up. Ah! Ben Tennyson roared to the sky as if he had some consciousness at this moment, then fainted. Sigh. Tian Xiaoyan looked at him and shook his head helplessly. Then he saw the police car arriving below, so he switched to Fast Flash Star, picked him up, and quickly escaped. On the other side, a short figure walked out of a warehouse, frowning and saying, "Did I fail?" Obviously, he had played a trick. The next morning, the 2 monsters that caused a ruckus in the mall last night are still at large, but fortunately, there were no casualties. Ben Tennyson, though a bit tired, looked at the news report on the TV in shock. This is impossible. How could I turn into an alien monster to cause trouble? Ben Tennyson looked at the scene of the upgrade and ice ghost fighting in front of him, unable to imagine it. Little Ban, there are many things that cannot be explained when people are sleepwalking. Tien Mark still comforted Ben Tennyson, but he still believed it was due to sleepwalking. Grandpa, I have a different idea. Tien Xiaoyan suddenly raised his hand and said. What? Tien Mark turned his head and asked. Tien Xiaoyan did not answer. His eyes glowed red as he approached Ben Tennyson and then placed his hand on his head. Ah! Ben Tennyson didn't feel anything at first, but suddenly a sharp pain stimulated his brain, and he pushed Tien Xiaoyan's hand away. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you it would hurt a bit, but at least I know why you were so abnormal. Tien Xiaoyan said apologetically. What's the reason? Ben Tennyson and the other 2 looked at him with anticipation. Upon hearing this, Tien Xiaoyan helplessly looked at Gwen Tennyson. Xiao Wen. I think you can apologize to Little Ban now. Huh, why? Gwen Tennyson was a bit confused. Why did the trouble turn to her? Seeing their confused expressions, Tien Xiaoyan immediately explained. I just detected a hypnotic suggestion in Little Ban's mind. As long as the set time is reached, his body will unconsciously start to move. Hypnotic suggestion. What does that have to do with me? Ben Tennyson said blankly. Hypnosis, wait, could it be? Gwen Tennyson suddenly understood everything and smiled sheepishly at Ben Tennyson. Little Ban, do you remember you guys went to a hypnosis event the day before yesterday? Tien Xiaoyan spread his hands and said lightly. Oh, now that you mention it, I remember. So it's all your fault, Xiao Wen. After hearing this, Ben Tennyson suddenly had a flash of insight, remembering everything, and looked angrily at Gwen Tennyson. Hee, sorry, I didn't know what would happen. Gwen Tennyson also understood that the matter was caused by her and directly admitted defeat. What exactly happened? Tien Mark still asked with a confused expression. After Tien Xiaoyan explained to him, Tien Mark also understood everything and immediately looked at Gwen Tennyson with a blaming gaze. Xiao Wen. You really need to apologize to Little Ban. You almost made him a criminal, Tien Mark sighed and said seriously. I'm sorry, Little Ban. I was just playing around and didn't expect such a result. I'm really sorry. Gwen Tennyson also understood her fault and apologized to Ben Tennyson with guilt. It's okay. I'm just wondering why Shabu Lingnuo hypnotized me. Ben Tennyson didn't pay too much attention to it and randomly deduced Shabu Lingnuo's behavior. Most likely for the jewels, or to hypnotize everyone in the world. The hypnotic pocket watch he has emits a special wave. The 2 old people you were chasing before were probably also hypnotized by him, Tien Xiaoyan analyzed directly. Then, we can't let him get away with it, Tien Mark said directly, driving the old RV to the outside of the mall. After entering, they saw a giant clock. Wow, what is this? Ben Tennyson said in surprise. I have a bad feeling, Tien Xiaoyan said with wide eyes, and then the next second. Welcome everyone to the final show of my hypnosis show. Shabu Lingnuo will lead everyone into the ultimate hypnotic world and then make you serve me. Shabu Lingnuo's face appeared on a large screen, and he had a strange device on his face. Ding! 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 With a command, Shabu Lingnuo pressed the pocket watch in his hand, and then the giant clock also began to sway, emitting yellow fluctuations. Tian Xiaoyan, seeing this, used sky energy to construct a protective shield to envelop them, resisting the hypnotic sound waves, however. AXN. In an instant, everyone else in the mall was hypnotized, standing motionlessly like living corpses. This old guy really got something incredible, huh? Tian Xiaoyan had just complained when he found that the Ultimatrix suddenly started glowing yellow, clearly unlocking a new alien hero. This guy. He really knows how to pick a time, Tian Xiaoyan said in surprise, looking at the image in the watch. Finally, he removed the protective shield. As Shabu Lingnuo was admiring his masterpiece, he actually found that someone hadn't been hypnotized. After zooming in on the screen, he saw Ben10 and his family, remembering the kid who performed on stage the day before and his family. It's you guys, why aren't you hypnotized? Shabu Lingnuo put the screen in front of them and said in surprise. Because I am a great hero, a weirdo like you can't hypnotize me, Ben10 said with a confident smile, having already removed the hypnotic suggestion when Tian Xiaoyan scanned his mind. Oh, really? Catch them, Shabu Lingnuo sneered and began to command everyone in the mall. Ah. Immediately, countless ordinary people in the mall roared and rushed towards them. This is not a good idea, Ben10 complained. Seeing this scene, Ben10 turned the Omnitrix and transformed into Diamond Head, forming a crystal wall in front of them. Bang! 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 Those people angrily pounded on the crystal wall. Ben10 turned to Tian Xiaoyan and asked in confusion, Brother, why aren't you transforming? Coming, Tian Xiaoyan rotated the Ultimatrix, selected a character, and slapped it down, a bright red light flashing. Then, gradually appearing before everyone was a figure with sharp teeth and light blue skin, wearing a black and red jumpsuit and black gloves. It had sharp claws and wore a horned mask on its head. Between its limbs were green wing membranes like a flying squirrel, and the Ultimatrix was located in the center of its belly. Vampire blood is here. Tian Xiaoyan spread his arms and laughed loudly. Eek! Brother, this hero looks so scary. Ben10 immediately hid behind Tian Mark in fear. It's alright. Tian Xiaoyan pouted and said, then flew into the air, looking at the people surrounding them. Tui! 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 He spat out countless small red bats, directly covering their foreheads. Leaving them standing still, Ben10 saw this scene and immediately said in surprise, Wow, brother, what did you do? Just the same trick as that short old man up there. Tian Xiaoyan waved his hand and said. I've already pinpointed his location. I'll take you there and break down his door. Tian Xiaoyan suddenly turned to Ben10 with some discomfort. What are you doing? Ben10 was a bit confused seeing Tian Xiaoyan suddenly bowing his head. I suddenly feel like Grandpa and Xiao Wen look a bit delicious, Tian Xiaoyan suddenly blurted out coldly. What the hell are you talking about? Ben10 cursed upon hearing this. Ben10 and Tian Mark looked at Tian Xiaoyan in shock from the side. It's a bit awkward. This alien has some craving for the life energy of intelligent beings, but it's also because of this that I found that guy's location. Hurry up, I'm afraid I can't hold back, Tian Xiaoyan said painfully. Upon hearing this, Ben10 quickly grabbed Tian Xiaoyan and had him lead the way. Bang! 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 Then Tian Xiaoyan and the others dodged other ordinary people controlled by Shabu Lingnuo. Bang! Ben10 punched open the door to Shabu Lingnuo's monitoring room. Ah! In the instant Shabu Lingnuo panicked, Ben10 fiercely grabbed him and then smashed his pocket watch. It's over, you liar, Ben10 said fiercely. Bang! With the shattering of the pocket watch, everyone in the entire mall returned to normal. Phew! Finally, I can change back. Tian Xiaoyan suppressed the churning in his heart and was about to pat his watch to transform back. Ben10 suddenly reached out to stop him. Wait, brother, can this hero of yours control people? So, after you exit, will the control effect still be there? Tian Xiaoyan nodded, indicating it should last for half an hour. He meant, what do you want to do? Upon hearing this, Ben10 looked at Shabu Lingnuo with a mischievous smile. Shabu Lingnuo looked at the diamond head in front of him in horror. Ah. A moment later, the police also arrived and were about to look for the culprit when, cluck, cluck, cluck. They heard a strange sound, looked down, and saw Shabu Lingnuo, with a 2-inch haircut, wearing a funny rooster costume, comically mimicking a rooster. I am the culprit. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Shabu Lingnuo said with a strange cry. The police officers looked at each other, all showing surprised expressions. But because only this guy was acting crazy, and to give an explanation to their superiors, they could only arrest him and take him back. Is this your revenge? Tian Xiaoyan said in surprise outside. Who told that guy to make me so embarrassed? Ben10 smiled contentedly, crossing his arms. All right, let's go. Tian Xiaoyan patted him on the shoulder and turned to walk towards the old RV. Hey, brother, wait for me. Ben10 shouted loudly, looking at Tian Xiaoyan who had already walked a distance, and then hurried after him. Thanks for watching.